Chapter 1068. The entire altar was in a state of chaos. One after another, powerful demonic beasts rushed out. One after another, martial artists erupted with divine might. They had been imprisoned and were about to become sacrifices, but now, they had a chance to live. Taking a step back, even if they couldn't make it out alive, they still wanted to kill as many enemies as possible. At the very least, they didn't want to die in such a sullen manner. Thus, these prisoners had turned into ferocious tigers that had been released from their cages. They bared their sharp teeth and completely unleashed their ferocious nature and killing intent. "Brat, it's you." One of the guards finally caught Ling Han and the dog in the middle of destroying the prison, and he shouted angrily. This was ruining His Majesty's plans, so he had to bear the consequences. "Go die." He slammed out with his palm, and it was as if a mountain was crushing down on him. The attack didn't even land, but Ling Han felt as if he was about to be flattened by that terrifying aura. Sun Moon Tear, I can't fight him head-on, he thought. He grabbed the small dog, and he hid inside the black tower. Pang! He struck out with his palm, but it did not hit anything. "What?" the guard cried out in alarm. He was the leader of this place, and could be said to be the prison warden. He was responsible for all of the sacrificial offerings, yet the main culprit had actually disappeared into thin air. How was he supposed to explain this to the Eternity Sky Emperor in the future? This was something His Majesty had personally instructed him to do. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but tremble, cold sweat dripping down. So what if he was at the medium extreme of the Sun Moon tier? In front of Heavenly Body tier elites, he was nothing more than an ant. What more when the Eternity Sky Emperor was a supreme elite at the consummate level of the Heavenly Body tier. He could kill him hundreds of times with a single glance. Inside the Black Tower, the Azura Demon Emperor stared at the puppy, his expression filled with hostility. This was too hateful. It was actually a dog. Wasn't it trying to steal his business? The small dog, however, was extremely proud, and completely ignored the Azura Demon Emperor. It only looked curiously around the environment inside the Black Tower, and there was an obvious expression of shock on its face. Anyone who entered the Black Tower for the first time would be shocked. The Azura Demon Emperor couldn't help but ask, "Master, is this stupid dog your new pet?" "No." Ling Han shook his head. "He's just staying here for a while. He'll leave soon." Only then did the Azura Demon Emperor feel as if a great burden had been lifted from his shoulders, and he no longer had to worry that his task would be snatched by someone else. They were in the Black Tower, but the guards still hadn't left. It was as if he was certain that Ling Han had used some method to hide in the shadows, and he just hadn't found him yet. There was a huge commotion at the altar. The prisoners that had been liberated by Ling Han numbered in the tens of thousands, and they were basically all at the Mountain River tier. Together, they were a powerful force. Who would have thought that these prisoners whose cultivation levels had been suppressed could still rebel? The defenses here were not strong enough, and they were instantly breached. However, at this moment, a frightening aura swept over, and everyone was sent sprawling on the ground. Even if Ling Han was inside the Black Tower, he still felt an indescribable palpitation. A master is coming. After a while, a tall man walked out of the passageway. He wore a black cloak that fluttered even though there was no wind. 9 flames danced behind him, forming a circle. Every streak of flame was filled with an intimidating power. Even a Sun Moon tier elite would be filled with boundless fear when they saw it. If they came into contact with the slightest bit of these flames, they would instantly be burned to ashes. This was an elite of the Heavenly Body tier. True enough, this place was too important. There was actually an elite of the Heavenly Body tier standing guard nearby. When he discovered that there was a commotion at the altar, he rushed over to suppress it. In front of such an elite, what was the use even if there were tens of thousands of Mountain River tier cultivators? One look, one aura, and they could completely suppress them. The gap was so wide that it could no longer be described with words. "Greetings, Your Highness." The remaining guards all knelt down, respectfully paying their respects. Your Highness. Ling Han's heart moved. The Eternity Sky Majestic Empire did not have many kings, and there was only one, and that was the Eternity Sky Emperor's younger brother, Chang Tao, who was known as the Nine Flames Heavenly King. It was said that his cultivation level had reached the high extreme of the heavenly body tier. The Nine Flames Heavenly King really lived up to his name. 9 divine flames danced behind him, and this was his strongest killing move. Hiss, even the Eternity Sky Emperor's younger brother was standing guard here, which showed how much importance the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire placed on this treasure. With a casual wave of the 9 Flames Heavenly King, cultivators and demonic beasts were all flung into the air by him, and then killed. Fresh blood splattered, and life essence was absorbed by the altar, feeding it to whatever treasure underground, using life essence to dispel the murderous aura. He was too powerful, and there was absolutely no one that could resist the power of a wave of his hand. A large amount of life essence filled the altar. If one cultivated here, it would be no less than a holy land. However, whoever did so would definitely become the public enemy of the entire immortal realm. This was too deranged. Thus, sects like the Heaven's Sword Palace and the other sects would secretly use the lower realm as a cauldron. They would refine it once every 10,000 years and obtain a few realm pills. This was an extremely nourishing item, and was even beneficial to Genesis tiers. However, the effects were limited. Under the suppression of the aura of the heavenly body tier, the living beings here could not even let out a scream, and were killed one after another as blood sacrifice. His Majesty's plan definitely cannot be disrupted by anyone, the 9 Flames Heavenly King said darkly. Though his voice was not loud, it spread to every corner, and everyone could hear it clearly. Yes, Your Highness, the guards answered respectfully again. Now tell me, why did the prisoners here run away? The 9 Flames Heavenly King asked coldly. These people had all had their cultivation sealed. They were merely in the mountain river tier, and with their own power, they would not be able to remove the seal in their entire lives. The guards were all silent. They really could not explain it either. Are you all trash? The 9 Flames Heavenly King flew into a rage. Such a riot had already occurred, but these people actually did not know what was going on. Your Highness, I have thought of a possibility. A guard ran over. It was precisely the prison warden. Speak. Yes. The prison warden hurriedly recounted the events of his previous encounter with Ling Han. The 9 Flames Heavenly King had casually grabbed a prisoner, smacked him to death, and read his soul. Because the incident had only happened for a short while, he only had to find the end, and very soon, he discovered the scene of Ling Han rescuing the prisoner. He had tossed that prisoner into the lake of blood, and then grabbed another prisoner to read his soul. 1, 2, 3, and the memories he had obtained were all the same. Who is this person? The 9 Flames Heavenly King was astonished. From the memories of these people, he knew that the person who had rescued the prisoners was only in the medium extreme of the mountain river tier, so how could he possibly have removed the seal on the others? Furthermore, there had been a lapse of memory at a crucial point, and when their memories reappeared, their cultivation level had suddenly recovered. Strange, very strange, suddenly disappearing. Could it be a spatial god tool? He showed an expression of shock. It was impossible for others to immediately think of that, but elites of the heavenly body tier had extensive knowledge, and naturally could not be compared to ordinary people. Chapter 1069. No. The 9 Flames Heavenly King immediately shook his head. Even if it's a spatial god tool, it can't possibly completely disappear. Spatial god tools also have form. What kind of secret technique is this? Where did this person come from? He murmured, the 9 Demons' sword is of great importance, and there can't be any mistakes. Furthermore, it's already at this critical juncture, and the day of harvest is close at hand, so it can't be destroyed by others. Could it be that the news was leaked, and attracted the attention of other elites? But with the strength of our empire, aside from the chaotic star's majestic empire and jade drop majestic empire, who else has the right to covet our things? If it's the chaotic star's majestic empire, they should have sent a large army now, and definitely not a mere mountain river tier cultivator. Strange, I can't figure it out. However, the blood sacrifice is also coming to an end. Tomorrow, my brother will come and personally harvest the 9 demons' sword. As long as we survive this day, with the 9 demons' sword in hand, who do we need to fear? He stopped thinking to himself, and swept his gaze over everyone. He said, "Continue the blood sacrifice, there can be no mistakes." "Yes, Your Highness." The 9 Flames Heavenly King personally stood guard, and the blood sacrifice continued. Now, who could escape alive? Fuck. Ling Han was also speechless. If there were only elites at the Sun-Moon tier here, he could still think of a way to escape. However, there was a supreme elite at the Heavenly Body tier, or perhaps even at the high extreme, standing guard here. Moreover, it was obvious that he had become suspicious. If he rashly left the Black Tower, he would definitely be suppressed at the first instant. One definitely couldn't doubt the strength of an elite of the Heavenly Body tier. Try. Ling Han tossed out the corpse of a guard. Shua, the 9 Flames Heavenly King immediately appeared, his gaze fixed on that corpse as if flowers were growing on it. True enough, this guy's divine sense enveloped the whole altar. The slightest bit of abnormality would cause him to react. Hee, little guy, how long do you want to hide? The 9 Flames Heavenly King laughed. I don't know what secret technique you use to hide your tracks, but you are only in the Mountain River tier, so how can you hide in front of me? He paused, and continued, I'll give you a chance. Show yourself, and I can spare your life. In fact, it is not impossible to take you as a battle servant. For an expert like him, taking someone as a battle servant was not a humiliation, but a supreme honor. Generally speaking, only elites at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier were qualified to break through to the Heavenly Body tier. Moreover, they had to be astonishingly talented, and were qualified to break through to the Heavenly Body tier. Ling Han naturally paid no attention to him. The 9 Flames Heavenly King revealed a trace of anger, and said coldly, since you insist on refusing a toast only to drink a forfeit, this king shall fulfill your wish. Boom! The 9 flames behind him suddenly blazed, forming a divine flame that set the surrounding area ablaze. The stone slabs were quickly burned red and began to melt. However, no one showed up. The 9 Flames Heavenly King couldn't help but be astonished. It should be known that from the moment the commotion was made to the moment he appeared, not even 1/100th of a heartbeat had passed. He could conclude that it was absolutely impossible for the other party to have escaped, and had definitely used some kind of secret technique to conceal himself in the vicinity. But under the burning of his 9 flames, no one appeared. It's incredible. Even if his opponent was also in the Heavenly Body tier, under the burning of his 9 flames, he would have to channel his full power to resist. Otherwise, it would be an act of seeking death. However, as long as there was resistance, there would definitely be elemental energy undulations, and he would be able to detect it immediately. Had he seen a ghost? The corpse had definitely been thrown out from a spatial spirit tool. Hold on. He searched carefully, but did not discover anything that looked like a spatial god tool in the vicinity. Though he had never seen such a precious treasure before, he assumed that it should be similar to a spatial spirit tool, being made in the form of rings, necklaces, jade bottles, and the like. But here, there wasn't even a single pebble. The 9 Flames Heavenly King was about to go mad. He had fought in innumerable tough battles, large and small, in his life, and had also entered and exited dangerous historical sites. His abilities were completely honed through hard work, but the present situation caused him to be completely dumbfounded. Humph, but at least this proves one thing. This person's abilities are indeed weak, and he isn't pretending to be in the Mountain River tier. That's why he doesn't dare to exchange blows with me, and doesn't even dare to show his face. That's because he also knows that the moment he appears, he will be suppressed by me. Then, no matter what, as long as Imperial Brother comes tomorrow and collects the 9-demon sword, so what if I announce the secret of this place to the whole world? We are destined to be invincible. He seemed to deliberately let Ling Han hear him. These words were not spoken softly, and he did not use his origin power to deliberately suppress them. Otherwise, those with lower abilities would clearly be able to hear him, but would not be able to hear a single word clearly. The 9-demon sword. Ling Han was astonished. Was this the treasure that they were plotting for? He asked the Azura Demon Emperor, and the latter naturally could only shake his head. He was not a person of this realm at all. Conversely, when he mentioned it to that small dog, he started barking, appearing to be very excited. You know? Ling Han was slightly surprised. He had not thought that even a dog would know. I know. The small dog looked incredibly shocked. Then why don't you hurry up and say it? The Azura Demon Emperor revealed a sinister expression. He really hated this dog. It actually belonged to the same clan as him, making him feel awkward even when he acted cute to curry favor with it. The small dog hurriedly fled behind Ling Han, and used its small paw to point at the Azura Demon Emperor, and said, "Brother, he's fierce to me." The Azura Demon Emperor bawled in fury. "I call Ling Han master, yet you call me brother, aren't you taking advantage of me?" Ling Han smiled. Why were there so many unreliable people around him? He sat down cross-legged, and said, "Don't keep me in suspense, tell me about the 9-demon sword." "All right." The small dog did not dare to disobey Ling Han. After organizing its thoughts, it said, according to the ancient legends, in the ancient ancestors of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire, possibly several 100 million years ago, there was once a supreme elite who forged a divine sword, and that was the 9-demon sword. This elite of the Chang clan wielded the 9-demon sword and swept through the world, and was known to be invincible. But later, an elite from beyond the stars suddenly arrived here, and a great battle erupted between him and the elite of the Chang clan. The result was that the elite of the Chang clan should have been defeated, and the 9-demon sword has disappeared since then. It is said that this 9-demon sword is an eternal river tier-level god tool. Pooh! The Azura Demon Emperor instantly spluttered. To him, Sun Moon tier was already high above, and Heavenly Body tier was invincible. Now, another eternal river tier-level god tool had appeared. How could he not pale with shock? Yet Ling Han was even more curious about the origins of this small dog, and said, "You know quite a lot." Hee, though our clan is not considered powerful, we love to collect information about the major events of the past. What more such an important event, the small dog said. Unfortunately, I am still too young, and the information I have come into contact with is limited. TSK, it was still a knowledgeable dog. Ling Han speculated, the Chang clan should have lost the 9-demon sword, but after countless years of searching, they finally found the location of the 9-demon sword. But because the 9-demon sword is an eternal river tier-level god tool, at least a level 13 god tool, they could not immediately retrieve it, and had to use the method of blood sacrifice to erase the murderous aura on it. Chapter 1070. Now, the truth was out. Everything could be strung together, and there was a perfect explanation. But the problem was still serious, because Ling Han had not been able to stop the process of the blood sacrifice. The Chang clan was still acting according to plan. Tomorrow, the Eternity Sky Emperor would come personally and take away the 9-demon sword. This was a god tool that was at least level 13. Once its might was unleashed, killing Heavenly Body tier elites would be child's play. The Eternity Sky Majestic Empire would unify the joint peace planet, and there would be no more opponents. No wonder they were so deranged and carried out such a large-scale blood sacrifice. It was because they would be invincible after obtaining the 9-demon sword, so what need was there for them to care about the criticism of others? Ling Han was slightly anxious, but he had no other way. Now that the 9 Flames Heavenly King was keeping watch, he would be courting death if he went out. There was absolutely no other possibility. My only hope is that Empress Yuan Xing still has the absolute beginning stone. This can absorb all attacks, and can even resist divine swords on the level of Eternal River tier. But the absolute beginning stone is only so small, and can only protect a limited number of vital points. I will still be at a great disadvantage. What should I do? Ling Han racked his brains, but in front of absolute power, any scheme would appear pale and powerless. The Nine Flames Heavenly King only needed a slap, and everything would be over. Time passed very quickly. The blood sacrifice was in progress, and a large amount of life essence was being absorbed by the altar, wearing down the murderous aura of the Nine Demons' sword. By the second day, one could clearly feel that even this altar was filled with murderous aura. This was not a bad thing. On the contrary, this was a sign that the blood sacrifice was about to succeed, because the murderous aura in the Nine Demons' sword had been forced out, and what would follow would be a decline from its peak. Ah! At this time, the Nine Demons' sword also displayed a frightening might. Flashes of sword light flew out from the blood lake, easily destroying the prison on the altar. As the sword light slashed, blood and flesh flew. The might of this sword light had reached the level of the heavenly body tier. To say nothing of the prisoners whose cultivation level had been sealed, even the guards were no match for it. If they were struck by this sword light, the only fate awaiting them would be death. They would be directly sliced into pieces, and not even a complete corpse would remain. Yet the Nine Flames Heavenly King was not alarmed, and was instead delighted. He laughed loudly, and said, as expected of an ancestral weapon. It is too powerful, too powerful. It has clearly not awakened, and there is only a hilt left, yet it already possesses such might. After it is collected, its might would at least be on par with pseudo-eternal river tier. Then, if it is completely fused with the divine sword, it would not be difficult for it to kill low-level eternal river tiers. He was so happy that he revealed many secrets. First of all, this divine artifact wasn't complete. It was broken. Secondly, the Nine Demons' sword should have been broken into a few pieces, and the sword hilt was buried here. Thirdly, the Chang clan should have grasped the whereabouts of the other divine artifact fragments. In other words, this altar was not the only one. Ling Han's heart thumped. The question now was whether the Eternity Sky Emperor had gone to collect the other parts of the Nine Demons' sword first. Otherwise, the Eternity Sky Emperor's battle prowess could possibly have leaped into the pseudo-eternal river tier by now. This was the invincible power of the joint peace planet. The sword lights interwove more and more densely, and even the Nine Flames Heavenly King did not dare to stay here any longer. It wasn't that he couldn't resist, but it was not worth it to do so. It would only be a waste of power. And the sword lights were so dense that the whole altar was very close to being destroyed. There was no need for him to consider the problem of Ling Han any longer. He was sure that if Ling Han was still inside the altar, he would definitely have been killed by the might of the god tool. If he was still alive after all that, then that would really be too unreasonable. Long. Finally, the altar that was as tall as a mountain collapsed, turning into a pile of rubble. However, the sword lights were still there, slashing towards the heavens and tearing the skies apart, displaying its frightening might. This was the moment when the Nine Demons' sword was at its most violent. Xiao, a figure flew through the air from afar. He was tall, and also wore a long cloak, but it was crimson in color, which danced in the air. Behind him, there were also 9 black orbs of light, but they were not flames. They were incredibly dark and eerie. Imperial brother. The Nine Flames Heavenly King stepped forward to greet him. The Eternity Sky Emperor, one of the 3 great rulers of the joint peace planet. His entire body was entwined with the aura of primal chaos, and his features were indistinct as if they were continuously changing. However, anyone who saw him once would definitely be able to recognize him the next time they met. This was a unique aura, just like Empress Yuan Xing. There were obviously not many people who had seen her true appearance, but they would definitely not confuse her with any other woman. The Eternity Sky Emperor stopped. His tall figure seemed to be able to support the heavens, and in front of him, even the heaven and earth seemed to become insignificant. His eyes swept over, and he said, "Very good, the murderous aura in the 9 demons' sword has been completely released. This is the ancestral tool of my Chang clan, and has an inseparable connection with the bloodline of my Chang clan. Later, I will use a secret technique to collect it, and it will be almost certain." "Congratulations, Imperial brother," the 9 Flames Heavenly King said with a laugh. "The hilt is the easiest to collect. In future, after we collect the remaining 3 fragments of the sword, we will be able to make the ancestral tool regain its supreme glory. However, Imperial brother, the 9 demons' sword has been buried for millions and millions of years, and it is originally a very ominous object. Now, its murderous aura is soaring even more. Even if there is a bloodline connection, Imperial brother should not be careless." The Eternity Sky Emperor laughed loudly, and said, "I naturally know." He showed an expression of pride, and said, "When I collect the 9 demons' sword, I will sweep through Jade Drop, sweep through the chaotic stars, and take Empress Luan Xing into my palace." Fine, after all this, it was still for the sake of Empress Luan Xing. Though he was filled with great ambition, wanting to sweep through the 2 great majestic empires and unify the joint peace planet, his last words still exposed his true nature. He was filled with desire for Empress Luan Xing. However, even this supreme overlord was so infatuated with Empress Luan Xing, making it his life goal to take her into his harem. It was clear how great the charm of this empress was. Giving birth to a son without an asshole. Ling Han cursed internally, but now he could only watch helplessly, unable to do anything. This feeling of helplessness made him very dissatisfied. It is time for us to settle our grievances with the Jade Drop Majestic Empire." The 9 Flames Heavenly King revealed a sinister killing intent. "That's right." The Eternity Sky Emperor humphed, his eyes similarly seething with killing intent. Sword light filled the sky, endless and endless. The murderous aura continued to condense and disperse, reaching its peak at this moment. In the end, it transformed into a gigantic human figure, which fixed its eyes on the Eternity Sky Emperor and the 9 Flames Heavenly King. "Imperial brother, leave this guy to me. You go collect the 9 demons' sword." The 9 Flames Heavenly King said heroically. "All right." The Eternity Sky Emperor gave a battle cry, and pressed his palm towards the ruins where the sacrificial altar was. Origin power condensed, turning into a gigantic palm the size of a mountain. With a shovel, a large amount of shattered earth was dug out. When the gigantic murderous figure saw this, it immediately smashed its fist over, bringing with it a terrifying divine sense attack. "Your opponent is this king." The 9 Flames Heavenly King stepped forward to meet the attack. Chapter 1072. Ling Han was shocked. That was the Eternity Sky Emperor, one of the 3 rulers of the joint peace planet, and he actually lost an arm. One had to know that this 9 demons' sword was the god tool passed down through the generations of the Chang clan, and was of the same origin as the cultivation technique that their clan cultivated, but even so, the Eternity Sky Emperor still lost an arm. The might of this 9 demons' sword was evident. If he really obtained it, could Empress Luan Xing still be a match for him? Could she really be taken into his harem, and become his personal pet? Thinking of this possibility, Ling Han couldn't help but feel very displeased. He knew that this was because the Empress's charm was too great, affecting even him. But even though he knew this, Ling Han was still filled with disgust, and didn't want Empress Luan Xing to fall into the arms of any man. This was probably the selfish mentality that every man who had seen Empress Luan Xing would inevitably have. Ha 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 ha. The Eternity Sky Emperor's laughter traveled over from the skies. The light that filled the skies was dissipating, and he was standing proudly, his remaining left hand grasping the 9 demons' sword. Obviously, he had obtained this god tool. After all, it was a bloodline inheritance, and he was strong enough. After sacrificing an arm, he finally became the new master of the 9 demons' sword. Even separated by the Black Tower, Ling Han could still feel how terrifying this sword was, as if it could penetrate his soul and tear it apart. 9 Demon's Sword, an Eternal River tier level god tool, at least level 13. Even if it was now broken and crippled, it was still terrifying. Even an elite like the Eternity Sky Emperor, who had cultivated a corresponding secret technique, still had to pay the price of an arm to obtain it. Moreover, this was only a quarter of the god tool. If the remaining 3 parts were taken out and fused, how terrifying would its might be? Imperial brother, are you alright? The 9 Flames Heavenly King leaped to the side of the Eternity Sky Emperor. Because the 9 Demon's Sword had been obtained, the murderous aura here had dissipated, and the gigantic evil spirit dissipated on its own. It's fine. It's just a broken arm. I can recover in half a year, the Eternity Sky Emperor said indifferently. The Eternity Sky Emperor said indifferently. This was actually not a small injury, but compared to the increase in his strength, it was completely not worth mentioning. I'll leave the rest to you. I'm going to completely refine it. At that time, it'll be much easier to collect the other 3 sword fragments, the Eternity Sky Emperor said. Yes. The 9 Flames Heavenly King received his orders. The remaining 3 fragments of the sword similarly emitted a baleful aura that soared into the heavens. They had to first construct a sacrificial altar to suppress the baleful aura within them before they could be collected. Otherwise, even if the Eternity Sky Emperor obtained the sword hilt and was also a descendant of the Chang clan, it would still be extremely difficult for him to do so. The Eternity Sky Emperor turned around and soared into the sky. The 9 Flames Heavenly King swept his gaze across the surroundings, his eyes filled with intense killing intent. He knew that Ling Han had been hiding in the dark all this while, but he didn't know what method he had used to conceal his aura. Even his attacks couldn't force him to reveal himself. Right now, he was completely unsure whether Ling Han was still here or not. He hated this ant very much. Previously, he had almost ruined the sacrificial ceremony, making him want to stomp him to death. Anyhow, the Eternity Sky Emperor had already obtained the hilt of the 9 Demon's Sword, and his battle prowess had already soared to pseudo-eternal river tier. Even if the secret of this place was leaked, there was nothing to worry about. Thus, after sweeping his gaze around, he also turned and left. He had more important matters to attend to. After he had left for a long time, Ling Han finally appeared from the Black Tower to avoid being ambushed by the other, though he thought that the possibility of this was not high. A mighty elite of the heavenly body tier actually wanted to ambush a junior like him. Ling Han parted ways with the small dog, and then drew out the cloud-piercing shuttle, hurrying towards the campsite of the Eastern Rain Nation. Because there was no murderous aura blocking his way, his speed was extremely fast. In a mere half a day, he had already flown above the furious river. Come, the legends were not false. This furious river was indeed created by an elite. If it wasn't the ancestor of the Chang clan, then it was that elite from beyond the stars that he had fought fiercely with previously. Ling Han descended the shuttle. Who is it? Soldiers immediately surrounded him. Scarlet Heaven Academy, Ling Han reported his identity. These soldiers didn't dare to believe him easily, and hurriedly invited the people of the Scarlet Heaven Academy to verify his authenticity. Ling Han. Zhao Luan immediately ran out. When he saw Ling Han, an indescribably strange expression appeared on his face. He had ambushed the Golden Lion Nation, yet suffered a complete and utter failure. This was a huge blow to him. After all, this was the first time he had mobilized troops, and it was a disgrace to his status as the son of a great general. However, he still comforted himself in his mind. After all, the other party had hidden a few hundred Sun Moon tier elites, so his defeat wasn't unjust. Moreover, Ling Han had also been captured by the Golden Lion Nation, so he definitely wouldn't be able to escape death. Now, however, Ling Han had appeared in front of him unscathed. How could his expression not be dark? How could you have returned? He humphed, and said, you must have defected to the enemy, and that's why you were released to be a spy, right? When these words were spoken, everyone was in an uproar. To soldiers, traitors were the type they hated the most. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, Zhao, which eye of yours saw that I defected to the enemy? Don't spout nonsense without evidence. Otherwise, even if you're the son of great General Zhao, I'll still bring you to His Majesty and explain things clearly. Humph, we were ambushed, and I had the protection of my treasured armor. That was how we managed to escape. What did you rely on? Moreover, you returned a few days later than me. Could it be that you didn't surrender after being captured? Zhao Luan said coldly. Since he hadn't been able to kill Ling Han on the battlefield, he would just make up a crime for him. Defecting to the enemy? As long as he had a solid foundation, there was no need to bring him back to the imperial capital for interrogation. He could be directly killed to uphold military discipline. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, Heir Zhao, you're really good at telling stories. The situation was so dangerous at that time, and I wasn't at the Sun Moon tier, nor did I have any treasured armor to protect me. I could only flee in panic, and only returned here after taking a big detour. Naturally, I wasn't as fast as Heir Zhao. Don't try to quibble. Zhao Luan pointed a finger at Ling Han. Ling Han shrugged, and said, Heir Zhao, you need evidence for everything. Otherwise, I will sue you for slander. Zhao Luan looked at him deeply for a while, and said, I will find it. He flicked his sleeves and left. Obstinate, self-conceited, and narrow-minded. Ling Han evaluated him in his mind. Then, he immediately went to find the ninth king. The matter of the 9 demons' sword was too important, and he had to send the news back as soon as possible. Otherwise, when the Eternity Sky Emperor obtained the complete 9 demons' sword, he would really be able to blot out the sky with one hand. Ling Han. Shui Yanyu came out to receive him. When she saw him, tears uncontrollably flowed out of her eyes. The entire assault team had been wiped out, and only Zhao Luan had managed to escape alive. This caused the majority of people to be very pessimistic, thinking that those who hadn't returned were definitely done for. Though Shui Yanyu was very confident in Ling Han, 1 day, 2 days, and 3 days had passed, and Ling Han still hadn't returned, causing her to be extremely worried. Now that Ling Han had finally appeared, she finally felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. She felt as if her whole body was about to collapse. Chapter 1073. Ling Han walked over, hugged her lightly, and then said, Don't worry, have you forgotten how many trump cards I have? Shui Yanyu only buried her head in his arms, and did not speak. Feeling this beauty's worry for him, Ling Han was moved, but now was not the time to be sentimental. Let's go find the 9th king first. I discovered an astonishing secret, Ling Han said. He went to see Hu Feiyun, and when she knew he had returned, she happily received him, saying, Zhao Luan actually captured you into the assault team, making me worry for a long time. Thankfully, you're fine. Ling Han smiled, and said, Thank you for your concern, 9th king. However, I discovered extremely astonishing information among the enemy, and must immediately return to the imperial capital to report to Her Majesty. Is it really that serious? Hu Feiyun blinked her large eyes. The Empress was busy, and she still had to cultivate. Ling Han was only in the Mountain River tier, so how could he have the right to see the Empress? Very serious. Ling Han nodded. Hu Feiyun thought for a moment, and made a prompt decision, saying, All right, let's return immediately. If not for her introduction, Ling Han would not have been able to see Empress Luanxing at all. She also had a fiery personality, and immediately handed over all military authority to Zhao Luan. In any case, she had always been a hands-off boss, so this did not affect her at all. Although Zhao Luan objected with all his might, could he leave it to the 9th king? Ling Han, Shui Yanyu, and the 9th king squeezed together, and immediately returned to the Chaotic Star's majestic empire on the cloud-piercing shuttle. When they came, they spent a whole 2 months, but on the return, it only took 3 or 4 days, showing how fast the cloud-piercing shuttle was. After returning to the majestic empire, Ling Han parked the cloud-piercing shuttle at the city gates. No one dared to fly into the city, or they would be immediately shot down. With Hu Feiyin leading the way, they naturally had a smooth journey, and soon arrived at the gates of the imperial palace. Hu Feiyin had the female guard make a report, and after waiting for half a day, they were finally summoned. Empress Wanxing summoned them in a side palace hall. "Big sister." Hu Feiyin immediately ran up to her with a distraught expression. "I've missed you so much." Empress Wanxing sat high on the throne. This throne itself was about 1.5 meters above the ground. She looked down from above, exuding a supreme divine might. Her beautiful face was still shrouded in the aura of primal chaos, but her slender and perfect figure exuded a fatal temptation. "Greetings, Your Majesty." Ling Han knelt on one knee. "Shui Yin, you didn't come with them." There was absolutely no need to drag her into this. She only went home with them because she was worried about staying at the front lines. After all, Zhao Luan was there. Who knew if he would lose his mind and do something disgusting? Empress Wanxing looked at Ling Han coldly, and didn't ask him to stand up. The pressure from her gaze was like a mountain. At this moment, even Hu Feiyin didn't dare to put in a good word for Ling Han. No one could offend the dignity of the Empress. "You're in the army, so why did you encourage the 9 kings to return?" Empress Wanxing finally spoke, a hint of displeasure in her voice. Ling Han understood that the Empress wasn't angry because the two of them had suddenly returned despite the battle at the front lines. Instead, she was displeased with his influence over Hu Feiyin. She actually returned just like that. He couldn't care about this, and said, "I discovered an astonishing matter, and must immediately report it to Her Majesty. However, my status is low, and it's impossible for me to have an audience with Her Majesty. I can only ask the 9th king for help." "What matter?" Empress Wanxing finally let go of the matter that Ling Han could influence the 9th king, at least temporarily. Ling Han organized his thoughts, and then narrated from the ambush of the assault team to the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire, all the way until the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire obtained the 9 Demons' Sword. "Yeah." Hu Feiyin immediately paled in shock. She shook Empress Wanxing's arm, and said anxiously, "Big sister, what should we do?" Empress Wanxing, however, was calm, and said, "I've long heard that countless years ago, there was an imperial empire on Joint Peace Planet, and it was the distant ancestor of the Chang clan. However, there was a great battle later, and the imperial empire of the Chang clan collapsed. It was replaced by the Jade Drop Imperial Empire. However, the Jade Drop Imperial Empire also encountered several major crises. All of their elites died in battle, and there was a shortage of successors, causing their strength to plummet. In the end, the Chang clan rose again, and established the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire to oppose the Jade Drop Majestic Empire." Ling Han listened, and couldn't help but be surprised. It turned out that there was such a deep grudge between the two majestic empires. In that case, both the Jade Drop and Eternity Sky Majestic Empires had eternal river tears as their background. The Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire had the weakest foundation, and had only been established for over 1,000,000 years. In a small world, this was an incredibly long time, but in the immortal realm, 1,000,000 years was really not long. Which of the two majestic empires didn't have a history of over 100 million years? If their predecessors were included, it was even more frighteningly long. "I'll personally lead the army." Empress Wanxing suddenly stood up. "Big sister, the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire obtained the 9 Demons' Sword. Why don't you ask the Jade Drop Emperor to come with you? Otherwise, you'll be in too much danger." Hu Feiyin hurriedly advised. "It's fine." Empress Wanxing was full of confidence. Ling Han knew that the source of her confidence was definitely the absolute beginning stone, which could absorb all attacks. Although the 9 Demons' Sword was powerful, it was only at the Eternal River tier, and was far from surpassing the upper limit of the absolute beginning stone's ability to absorb attacks. Thus, with this mysterious stone in hand, Empress Wanxing naturally didn't need to worry too much about the 9 Demons' Sword. Empress Wanxing glanced at Ling Han, and paused for a moment. It was obvious that she had guessed Ling Han's thoughts. Ling Han's expression was solemn, and he didn't show the slightest bit of complacency. Only then did Empress Luan Xing withdraw her gaze, and directly stepped forward. Behind her, a series of stars floated, and suddenly soared into the sky. In an instant, she turned into a small dot of light, and disappeared into the vast sky. This empress was even more decisive, and when she said she would personally lead the army, she really did it. She had run so quickly. Let's go as well. Ling Han hurriedly ran out of the imperial palace with Hu Feiyun. However, they weren't Empress Luan Xing, and couldn't directly fly in the city. They had to first leave the imperial capital, and then draw out the cloud-piercing shuttle, and rush toward the Eastern Rain Nation. By the time they arrived, the Golden Lion Nation had already retreated. At the front, no one knew that Empress Luan Xing had already fought with the Eternity Sky Emperor. They were all confused. The Golden Lion Nation had retreated just like that, and they could only think that the Golden Lion Nation had already revealed the secret that they had elites from the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire. Afraid of an all-out war with the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire, they had chosen to retreat of their own accord. The battle had suddenly ended. However, Ling Han knew that Empress Luan Xing had definitely won, or at least had the upper hand. The absolute beginning stone was really awesome. Otherwise, the possibility of Empress Luan Xing losing was very high, and if it weren't for the fact that the Nine Demons' sword only had a hilt left, even the absolute beginning stone might not have been able to block it. After all, the absolute beginning stone was only the size of a palm, so how many attacks could it block? The Eternity Sky Emperor had just been severely wounded, and his strength had definitely been affected. On top of that, he was restrained by the absolute beginning stone, which was why he had lost to Empress Luan Xing. However, it was unknown how the battle between the two elites had ended. Was the Nine Demons' sword still in the Eternity Sky Emperor's hands, or was it stolen by Empress Luan Xing, and became her spoils of war? However, the Nine Demons' sword was a god tool of the Eternal River tier, and even Empress Luan Xing couldn't possibly obtain it, because they didn't have a bloodline connection, and her cultivation level was far inferior. Chapter 1074. The battle ended, and when everyone returned to the imperial capital, Zhao Luan immediately submitted a complaint to the Ministry of War, reporting Ling Han's defection to the enemy during the battle. Zhao Luan was the acting commander this time, and his complaint naturally received the attention of the Ministry of War. Moreover, Zhao Luan was the only son of Great General Zhao, and his status was quite respected, so no one dared to treat it as a small matter. Therefore, a vigorous investigation was immediately launched. The situation was indeed suspicious. Ling Han was very talented, and this was recognized by everyone. However, no matter how talented he was, his true cultivation level was there. He was only at the peak of the medium extreme, and even if he could surpass 5 stars, that was only battle prowess in the early stage of the consummate level. So many students in the middle stage, late stage, and peak stage of the consummate level were captured, so how could he escape? With the end of the battle, the captured students were naturally released. Some of them swore that they had personally seen Ling Han captured by the enemy for interrogation, and then he was not locked up with them again. It seemed like there were witnesses. False accusation, this is a blatant false accusation. Shui Yenyu was naturally furious after hearing this. She knew some of Ling Han's secrets. With the Black Tower, how could Ling Han be captured? Furthermore, Ling Han had discovered the Eternity Sky Nation's plot, and had the Empress personally come out. It was clear how important the information Ling Han brought back was. He was a hero of the Empire, and now Zhao Luan was using his position to avenge his personal grudge, and even colluded with others to frame Ling Han. What a despicable person, shameless to the extreme. Ling Han snickered, and said, I stole his heart, so he will use any means necessary to take revenge. The more shameless and despicable the means, the more it shows his pain now. Shui Yenyu rolled her eyes at him, and said, You're actually not worried at all. Zhao Luan was building up momentum, creating a wave of public opinion that Ling Han was a traitor of the empire. Once everyone thought that Ling Han was a traitor, then the truth would not be important. At that time, would the Shui clan still marry their daughter to Ling Han? Ling Han smiled, and said, "If worrying is useful, then I will worry. Who asked me to be alone and without help? You can ask the ninth king for help," Shui Yanyu immediately said. Ling Han shook his head. The Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire had already expressed her displeasure with his relationship with Hu Feiyun. If he went to ask the ninth king for help now, it was likely that the Empress would really make a move against him. "Don't," he said, "Zhao Luan is just a jumping clown. As long as one person speaks up, then no matter how much these people jump, it will all be in vain." "Your Majesty." Shui Yanyu came to a realization. "My wife is so smart." If Empress Luan Xing was willing to speak up, then with her absolute authority, she would naturally be able to resolve this matter easily. However, the problem was, this only involved a mere ninth-rank military general. Would such a trivial matter even reach the ears of Her Majesty? The Empress naturally had a multitude of affairs to attend to every day, and she also had to concentrate on cultivation. She was the pillar of support for the empire. Without the Empress holding up the heavens, the Chaotic Star's majestic empire would have long since been swallowed up by the other two great majestic empires. Thus, why would the Empress care about such a small matter? Ling Han smiled faintly. Shui Yanyu did not have an official rank, and had never used power of the nation before. How could she know that as long as the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire was willing, every movement of the entire empire could be completely grasped in her hands? Of course, this would expend too much effort, and the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire would definitely not do this. However, the imperial capital was of utmost importance, so everything was naturally under the control of this Empress. He had exposed a great scheme of the Eternity Sky Emperor, yet the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire had yet to reward him. This was obviously intentional. Most likely, she wanted to use this opportunity to regulate the discipline of the empire. Some people should not jump too far. In this matter, the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire had not expressed her stance at all, but Ling Han had realized it. Because they were all smart people, and because Ling Han was also the ruler of a majestic empire, though his great Ling Empire was much smaller. The matter was still fermenting. The news that Ling Han had defected to the enemy and was about to be punished spread throughout the entire imperial capital, causing a considerable number of people who did not know the truth to feel very regretful. He clearly had a great future ahead of him, so why did he have to defect to the enemy? No force would accept betrayal. This was the bottom line. Under the immense pressure, a great number of people drew a clear line between themselves and Ling Han. Even Li Weiwei was no exception. She personally made a trip to Ling Han's place and told him that the left minister had given her a lot of pressure, telling her not to meet with Ling Han in the near future. Although Li Weiwei was rebellious, if the left minister had strictly instructed her to do something, she would not dare to go against him. Thus, she could only apologize to Ling Han. Ling Han was still quite moved. After all, she was the daughter of the left minister, and her status was high and lofty. It was already very commendable for her to specially run over to say a word. She really treated him as a friend. After all, they could not keep investigating. Another 2 days later, the Ministry of War decided to put Ling Han on trial in public, and the time was tomorrow at noon. Those who possessed an official rank of the empire could not be punished by just a word. Of course, the Empress was an exception. She possessed supreme authority. Thus, the Ministry of War first carried out an investigation to determine whether Ling Han had committed treason. Once it was confirmed, they could propose to the Empress that Ling Han be stripped of his rank as a 9th-rank military officer. Then, they would be able to deal with him as they pleased. This also showed the importance of a rank of nobility. The investigation was divided into 2 types, a normal investigation and a public trial. A normal investigation would be conducted by the Ministry of War behind closed doors on Ling Han. The process would not be made public, and only a final announcement would be made. Meanwhile, a public trial was the exact opposite. During the investigation, outsiders were allowed to observe. Because it was possible that Ling Han had committed a crime of treason, the implications were too great, so the Ministry of War decided to put him on trial in public. Of course, it was unknown whether Zhao Luan had added fuel to the fire in this. Perhaps he was more interested in Ling Han being publicly convicted. And with such a major incident happening, the gambling house was not content with its silence. It offered odds on whether Ling Han would ultimately be convicted, such as whether he would be acquitted, stripped of his official rank, or even executed in public. All of a sudden, the most discussed topic in the entire imperial capital was the matter of Ling Han's treason. Great General Sha's residence. Sha Yuan laughed loudly, and said, "Tomorrow is the public trial? Hee, this guy is going to be out of luck. With so many witnesses, he will definitely be nailed to the pillar of shame. With such a good opportunity, if I don't participate in it, it would really not be enough to vent my anger. Yuan Long, go and make arrangements. I believe that there should be more than these few people who have committed treason against Ling Han," he said calmly. "Yes, young master," a young man immediately replied from behind him. "Ling Han, oh, Ling Han, you really refuse to drink a toast, and insist on forcing me to make a move against you." Sha Yuan smirked coldly. "As long as you lose your official rank, coupled with the crime of treason, the only thing awaiting you is death. After I throw you into prison, I will search out all the secrets on you." Chapter 1076. Zhao Luan was really thick-skinned. While suppressing Ling Han, he didn't forget to flatter himself, and took the credit of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire's retreat. In reality, almost no one knew that Empress Luan Xing had personally moved. Thus, the Golden Lion Nation, or rather, the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire's sudden retreat could only be attributed to the fact that their secret had been leaked, and they didn't dare to continue fighting. Otherwise, if the two majestic empires went to war, it would only benefit the Jade Drop Majestic Empire. In that case, Zhao Luan had really made a great contribution, because the entire assault team was lost, and only he had escaped, and exposed the fact that there were elites from the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire in the Golden Lion Nation. Originally, it was a magnificent failure, a rash operation launched without knowing the enemy's depth and background, but in Zhao Luan's mouth, it became a great contribution. This person's thick-skinned was indeed impressive. "Ling Han, do you have anything to say?" Nan Menyang asked Ling Han. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "Just as Zhao Luan said, I am only in the medium extreme, and no one took me seriously. Then, isn't it very normal for me to escape? Furthermore, I also want to ask Zhao one thing. Since you clearly know that I am only in the medium extreme, why did you choose me to join the assault team?" This. Zhao Luan was startled. He didn't think that Ling Han would ask this in public. Could he say that he wanted to avenge a personal grudge, and borrow the enemy's power to eliminate him? If he said that, he wouldn't have a good ending. Not only would he be punished by the Empire, which soldier would dare to follow him in the future? Wouldn't he be afraid of being tricked by him one day? "Ling Han, don't try to change the topic," Zhao Luan hurriedly said. How could he let Ling Han lead the way? This was a trial of whether he had defected to the enemy, so why drag him into it? And, don't try to change the topic. Gu Tianchu nodded. He was naturally on Zhao Luan's side. "Ling Han, don't be so glib. There are many witnesses here that can prove that you were indeed captured that day, so don't deny it," Kong Chenghe said coldly. "Oh, then I'd like to hear how I was captured," Ling Han said with a smile. "Summon the witness." Kong Chenghe looked displeased. This brat really wouldn't shed a tear until he saw the coffin. One young man after another walked into the public trial venue. They were precisely the disciples of the academy who had joined the assault team at the beginning. Later on, they had been captured. Fortunately, Empress Luan Xing had acted quickly. Otherwise, they would probably still be locked up in cages at this moment. Zhao Luan's gaze swept over them, and he couldn't help but reveal a hint of surprise. He had only found a dozen or so witnesses, but now there were almost 30. What the hell are the extra ones? I'm Ning Ziming. I'm Ming Luren. I'm Bu Xing, I am. These people reported their names one by one. However, some people only needed to think about their family backgrounds to realize that their elders were either Great General Sha's subordinates or Great General Zhao's direct descendants. Zhao Luan instantly understood that Sha Yuan was in the same trench as him on this matter. I really didn't expect this. However, with the two generals' sons working together, it would be strange if they couldn't kill a little outsider kid. I saw it with my own eyes. Ling Han was captured together with us, and I was even locked in the same cell as him. It was only half a day, and Ling Han was brought to trial, and then he never returned. If he hadn't betrayed us, how could he have possibly escaped from the enemy's hands and returned to the camp? Thankfully, Heir Zhao brought the information back, and forced the Golden Lion Nation and the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire to retreat. Otherwise, with the traitor Ling Han acting as a spy, who knows how much damage the empire would have suffered. These people were all talking, and lying through their teeth. As the saying went, a crowd's words could melt gold. With so many people testifying against Ling Han, who should the masses who didn't know the truth believe? Naturally, they should believe the side with more people. Traitor. In the crowd, it was unknown who was the first to call out. Traitor. Even more people began to cry out, and it instantly formed an avalanche of voices. Even if Li Weiwei, Ji Yun, and the others believed in Ling Han, their voices of opposition instantly disappeared amidst these furious shouts. Shui Yanyu clenched her fists tightly. As long as Ling Han entered the Black Tower once, it would prove that he couldn't possibly be captured by the enemy, but if the secret that he possessed a spatial god tool was exposed, who knew how many people would make a move against him? Though he was freakishly talented now, his level was too low, after all. The left minister, the 7 generals, and the other elites couldn't possibly notice him, but once the secret of the spatial god tool was exposed, perhaps even the Empress would be moved. This was a dilemma. He could either be labeled as a traitor, or be targeted by many elites. Either choice was extremely terrible. Why hadn't the Empress come to help him? Could it be that in the eyes of Her Majesty, such a small matter was not worthy of her attention? Ling Han, what else do you have to say? Kong Chenghe asked menacingly. I have nothing to say. Ling Han shook his head. Then you admit your guilt, Gu Tianchu followed up. Ling Han shook his head as he said, I really have nothing to say to this bunch of idiots. All of them are lying through their teeth, and there is no room for communication at all. You, traitor, you still dare to quibble. You have committed such a treasonous act, and you still dare to be arrogant. These witnesses were all filled with righteous indignation. They were actually called idiots in public. Ling Han calmly said, whatever man does, the heavens follow. Ask your heart of martial art. Can you feel at ease doing this? He shouted out these words with the 7-kill subduing soul technique, which only reached the depths of their souls. It was just that it no longer had any destructive power. Suddenly, these witnesses all paled. Their hearts were being interrogated, and even their souls were trembling. Ling Han, you still dare to threaten the witnesses? Zhao Luan asked menacingly. Boom, a red sun rose up behind him, and the aura of the sun-moon tears spread out without reservation, pressing down on Ling Han. Ling Han couldn't help but falter. He could even be unafraid of the aura of the eternal river tear, but aura and aura were two different things. Now, this aura was real pressure. A suppression of an entire major tier, this was a gap that no prodigy could possibly make up for. Ling Han immediately broke out in sweat. Ka, his godly bones cracked, and his face instantly flushed red. Heir Zhao, are you trying to extort a confession? He asked coldly, unyielding in the slightest. In front of so many witnesses, you still dare to quibble. For someone like you, so what if I extort a confession? Zhao Luan smirked coldly. Zhao Luan, you've gone too far. Li Weiwei couldn't help but stand up. Fourth young miss, I've offended you. Xiang Qingyun immediately moved. With a wave of his palm, Li Weiwei was instantly rendered speechless. This was the complete suppression of the consummate level over the low extreme. The Lord Left Minister had ordered for Li Weiwei to maintain her distance from Ling Han as much as possible. To Xiang Qingyun, this was really good news. Thus, he was very happy to be this kind of villain. In any case, he also knew that Li Weiwei would definitely not lay her hands on him. If he was hated by her, then so be it. As long as he could cling on to the Lord Left Minister's leg, it would be fine. Ling Han, it has already come to this. If you are still not willing to confess, then you can only serve with great torture, Nan Menyang said darkly. Chapter 1077. Ha ha ha. Ling Han laughed loudly. Sure, I'd like to see how you torture me into confessing. Ling Han, no matter how eloquent you are, don't even think of escaping today. Facts speak louder than words. You've done something shameful, so you have to pay the price. The Empire cannot tolerate traitors. Those witnesses had already recovered from the shock of Ling Han's divine sense, and were naturally happy again. They wanted nothing more than to rush over and press Ling Han's head onto the ground personally, forcing him to kneel and confess. Traitor, die. On the stage, someone threw an egg. It naturally could not hit Ling Han, and was blocked by the origin power shield that he opened. Ling Han's gaze swept over, and saw that it was a sneaky young man. When he discovered his gaze, he immediately shrunk back, not daring to meet his gaze. Zhao Luan or Sha Yuan's lackey? Ling Han immediately thought to himself. This was purposefully guiding the public's anger. Sure enough, his smash caused many people to become excited. Some people were already prepared and threw their eggs, while some people were not prepared and spat on the ground. Although Ling Han had opened his shield, and would not be hit or spit by anything, there were over 1,000 people here, and at least half of them were doing something insulting to him. What kind of humiliation was this? If this spread, would Ling Han still be able to face the world? Zhao Luan smirked coldly. He did not care about the truth. If he could pin Ling Han to death with the crime of treason, that would naturally be the best, but even if he could not, just this scene was enough to make Ling Han suffer. Would he still be able to raise his head in the future? He had won this battle, and it was a complete victory at that. Pei, a minor character without any foundation, what did he have to fight with him? Zhao Luan looked towards Shui Yenyu, and saw this seductive beauty clench her fists tightly, her beautiful face pale. He could not help but feel a perverted sense of pleasure. He was already tired of playing with Yang Luodan. Alone, she had some taste, but when placed with Shui Yenyu, they were on a completely different level. Hee, you can't escape from my grasp. Men, bring the instruments of torture. Gu Tianchu shouted. With so many witnesses, his suggestion of using torture was not excessive, and it was in accordance with the rules. Soon, 2 people brought over a huge grindstone. This was a type of cruelty that would grind a person like a stone mill. Every bone, flesh, and blood would be ground into pieces. However, the vitality of a deity was tenacious, and they could completely endure for a long time. Thus, the pain they suffered was naturally even more severe. Everyone's expression changed at the mention of this thing. Zhao Luan and Sha Yuan both smiled coldly. They were finally going to make this lowly commoner suffer. The witnesses sneered. Some of them had no choice but to do it because they had received orders. Some of them were jealous of Ling Han and wanted him to disappear. Now that they were finally going to succeed, they naturally felt happy. Execute, Gu Tianchu said decisively. Wait. At that moment, a woman walked over. She wore a shining golden armor and looked like a goddess of war, exuding an unparalleled aura. Greetings, great commander. The 3 judges hurriedly stood up and walked out from behind the table. They all knelt and paid their respects to this female guard. Greetings, great commander. Even Zhao Luan and Xia Yuan paid their respects. The whole platform seemed to lower in unison. No one dared not to pay their respects. Chu Qiushue, the great commander of the Imperial Guards, an elite of the heavenly body tier. No matter which identity she had, it would be enough to intimidate the world. In the whole chaotic star's majestic empire, there were only the left and right ministers, the 7 generals, and a mere 9 people that could compare to her. However, Chu Qiushue stayed by the Empress's side all year round, and could be said to be the Empress's trusted aide. In a sense, she was the Empress's spokesperson, so her status was naturally even more extraordinary. With this important person coming in person, who wouldn't be on tenterhooks? Rise, Chu Qiushue said calmly. She was astonishingly beautiful, but who dared to take a second look at her now? Such an elite, an important person, who dared to stare at her? Wasn't that seeking death? Only then did everyone dare to stand up. They were all at a loss and confused. They were only interrogating a mere 9th-rank military general, so why would they attract the attention of a favored person by the Empress's side? I have come here today to announce a reward from Her Majesty, Chu Qiushue said, her gaze sweeping over Ling Han and Zhao Luan. Her Majesty wanted a reward. Then it had to be given to Zhao Luan. Everyone was certain in their hearts that Zhao Luan had discovered the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire's great scheme, and finally forced them to retreat of their own accord. This was a great merit, and it was reasonable for the Empress to reward him according to his merits. However, choosing this kind of moment. Wasn't this completely announcing Ling Han's death sentence? There was no need to torture him even if he came. The Empress had already expressed her stance, and he would be directly dragged out and executed later. Even Zhao Luan thought so, and couldn't help but look proud of himself. He had just received the Empress's commendation not long ago, and was conferred the title of a 7th-rank military general. Now that he was being rewarded according to his merits, no matter what, his official rank would rise another notch. TSK, 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 a 6th-rank military general that was not even 1,000 years old, this was definitely one of a kind in the empire. Who knew how many people would die of jealousy? Chu Qiushue drew out a decree. Instantly, golden light shot out in all directions, exuding a frightening might. Her Majesty is mighty. Everyone once again bowed down, kneeling to receive the Empress's decree. Imperial conferment. Chu Qiushue began to read. She was an elite of the heavenly body tier, so there was no need for her to read aloud at all. With the spread of her divine sense, her words could be clearly transmitted to every corner. Ling Han as a 7th-rank military general, pooh. When they heard Chu Qiushue's words, everyone spluttered, their eyes all popping out of their sockets, and their mouths gaping so wide that a fist could be stuffed inside. The Empress had actually conferred a title not to Zhao Luan, but to Ling Han. What was going on? Wasn't this guy a traitor? Hadn't Zhao Luan unraveled the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire's scheme, and achieved a great merit? Why was it the other way around? Everyone was dumbfounded, but Commander Chu knew how to joke around with the Empress's will. Joke your sister. That was Commander Chu, the Empress's trusted aide. The Empress did not ask whether Ling Han was a traitor, yet she just had to announce the imperial conferment of Ling Han at this critical juncture. Wasn't the meaning of this obvious? The Empress was very satisfied with Ling Han. Who else dared to say that Ling Han was a traitor? Who dared to say that he was a traitor? Wasn't that a slap to Her Majesty the Empress's face? May I ask in this world, who dared to slap the Empress's face? And, was there anyone? Zhao Luan's initially smug expression instantly crumbled. In fact, even his body was trembling. The son of great General Zhao was very awesome, but in front of the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire, he was nothing. To say nothing of him, even if it was his father, so what? If the Empress wanted to kill him, she would still not show any mercy. Otherwise, the 8 generals would not have become the 7 generals. The Empress was good, Ling Han, yet you wanted to frame him. Wasn't this opposing the Empress? To oppose the Empress in the chaotic star's majestic empire, you had to be an idiot, and an idiot who was not afraid of death. Zhao Luan felt that he was an idiot now, but he was extremely afraid of death. Chapter 1078. Twists and Turns. Who would have thought that the Empress would suddenly intervene? Such a small matter that only involved a mere 9th-rank military general actually caused the Empress to personally issue a decree, announcing it at this critical juncture. Furthermore, the Empress had mobilized a super elite like Chu Qiuxue. Many people sensed something more. The Empress definitely did not simply want to reward Ling Han. Ling Han, receive the decree. Chu Qiuxue handed the decree to Ling Han. Yes. Ling Han respectfully approached the decree, yet he was grumbling internally. Couldn't you have come earlier? Why did you have to wait until such a critical moment, causing me to almost be executed? Chu Qiuxue turned around, and said, Her Majesty said that we cannot mistreat those who have rendered meritorious service, and cannot disappoint the righteous. Those who had rendered meritorious service, Ling Han had rendered meritorious service. What kind of meritorious service did he have? Zhao Luan was shocked. When Ling Han had returned to the camp, he had immediately encouraged the 9th king to return to the imperial capital. At that time, he had only thought that Ling Han was cowardly and afraid of death. After all, there were several hundred Sun-Moon tier elites on the other side of the river. Without heavenly body tier elites keeping watch, who wouldn't be afraid? But now that he thought about it, it should be that the other had discovered some astonishing secret. Could it be that the retreat of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire was also related to Ling Han? He couldn't help but turn livid. At first, he had thought that he had rendered a great service, but who would have thought that he had completely misunderstood and misunderstood? Why, whenever he was involved with Ling Han, he would always have the upper hand. Zhao Luan was so conflicted that he wanted to pull out his own hair. No matter what, wasn't he a few hundred times better than Ling Han? So why did he always lose to him? Chu Qiuxue's killing intent surged, and her gaze swept over the close to 30 witnesses, causing them to tremble in fear. Cannot disappoint the righteous, what did she mean? Pa! Chu Qiuxue moved. With a press of her palm, a person's head was crushed, blood splattering 5 feet. This was the Ministry of War. Publicly killing people in the Ministry of War, how domineering was this? Of course, only Chu Qiuxue dared to do this. She represented the Empress' imperial will. Putting aside the fact that she had only killed people without official ranks, even if they had official ranks. No, don't kill me. It's Zhao. It's sand. These people were just about to confess to Zhao Luan and Sha Yuan, but Chu Qiuxue did not give them the chance. She struck out with her palm again, and all 20 or so people's heads exploded in an instant. Bright red blood and white brain matter splattered all over the ground. Bloody, cruel, domineering, this was a suppression. Everyone was shivering. This was the Empress's way of expressing her attitude. Don't think that just because Her Majesty is deep in the palace, she doesn't know anything and can be fooled by the people below. On the contrary, Her Majesty is very perceptive, and nothing can be hidden from her. Obviously, His Majesty was not satisfied with the network of relationships that the generals had privately weaved. This was Her Majesty's imperial court, not some general's back garden. However, the Empress obviously gave face to the 2 great generals Sha and Zhao. Though these witnesses had all been executed, she did not implicate Zhao Luan and Sha Yuan. Otherwise, if the matter was really pursued, these 2 would really suffer greatly. Furthermore, it was also very interesting that Her Majesty the Empress had appointed Ling Han as a 7th-rank military officer, because Zhao Luan was also a 7th-rank noble. In the Chaotic Star's majestic empire, the 2 of them were completely equal in status. Chu Qiuxue withdrew her hand, and calmly said, I am going back, and will not disturb your public trial. Continue. After saying so, she strode off. Farewell, great commander. Everyone knelt on the ground again. Chu Chioshue had left for quite a while, and the aura that was unique to an elite of the heavenly body tier finally disappeared. It was as if everyone had suffered a serious illness, and their expressions were all extremely ugly. Just then, Chu Chioshue had deliberately released the aura of the heavenly body tier, and this intimidation was naturally frightening. If she had the intention to kill, everyone here would instantly die, and their divine sense would directly explode. Is there still a trial? Gu Tianchu asked with a slight tremble in his voice. What trial was there? Her Majesty had already issued the imperial decree, and raised Ling Han's rank, and even interrogated Ling Han. Fuck, wasn't this examining his own head? Did he think he had lived long enough to go against the Empress? After a strict investigation, it has been determined that the previous witnesses were all falsely accusing Ling Han, and the matter of him committing treason and defecting to the enemy was completely unfounded. Kong Chenghe looked as if he had swallowed a few hundred flies, yet had no choice but to announce the result. Ling Han is acquitted and released. In the future, this matter is not to be mentioned again. Whoever dares to discuss the matter of Ling Han defecting to the enemy will be punished for slandering a meritorious official of the empire. After saying so, the three of them left as if they were fleeing. They really could not stay any longer. Being swept by Ling Han's gaze was like a twitch on their faces, and it was very uncomfortable. Everyone dispersed, and very soon, every detail regarding this public trial had spread throughout the imperial capital. Naturally, no one mentioned the matter of Ling Han's treason again. Even the Empress had expressed her opinion, so who dared to oppose her? In the chaotic star's majestic empire, the Empress was a true god, the heaven and earth. A word from her, a declaration from her, was superior to everything else. Ling Han could finally return to the great Ling Empire as well. Previously, he had already planned to do so, but the sudden invasion of the Golden Lion Nation had disrupted his plans, and it had been delayed for more than 2 months. Everything that needed to be prepared had already been prepared. He also refined some alchemical pills and left them in the medicine store. He still had to continue earning money. I'll go with you. Shui Yenyu knew that he had long since thought of returning. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, You are my wife, so you should indeed see those brothers of mine. Furthermore, after returning to the great Ling Empire, it is also time for us to consummate our marriage. Give birth to a few more monkeys for me. Fuck you. Shui Yenyu pouted coquettishly, and rolled her eyes at him. Ling Han laughed loudly. The next day, he left the imperial capital with Shui Yenyu, and set out for the great Ling Empire. They had the cloud-piercing shuttle, and unless an elite of the heavenly body tier made a move to snipe them, it was absolutely impossible to capture them. Of course, after arriving at the great Ling Empire, it was also considerably dangerous because there was no elite to keep watch. Even if Ling Han was a 7th-rank military officer of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire, it would be useless. Who would care? But after leaving for so long, Ling Han definitely had to make a trip back. In the past, he couldn't leave because of his status as a hostage, but now that he had the chance, he definitely had to make a trip back to the Great Ling Empire. Only when the Great Ling Empire truly flourished could he leave with peace of mind to search for his parents, son, and lovers. The cloud-piercing shuttle streaked through the skies like a bolt of lightning, so fast that even the eyes of Mountain River tier cultivators couldn't catch it. Even if elites of the Sun Moon tier pursued it with all their might, they could only look on and sigh at their inadequacy. Half a month later, the cloud-piercing shuttle carried the two of them to the Great Ling Empire. Finally, I'm back. Ling Han sighed ruefully. Though he was now an immortal, he was still more used to his original world. Wang. The great formation of the imperial capital was activated, targeting the cloud-piercing shuttle. However, this was only a shattering void tier-level formation. Even with the boost from power of the nation, it couldn't possibly cause any obstruction to the cloud-piercing shuttle. With a slight tremble, the cloud-piercing shuttle broke through the obstruction of the formation, and descended towards the imperial palace. Who is it? Instantly, everyone in the imperial palace was alarmed. Chapter 1080. Fourth brother, you haven't returned after so long, causing some people to have wicked ideas, Mu Rongqing said first. Recently, when the government orders were issued, there was obviously some obstruction. Some people are not willing to stay put. The Rain Emperor humphed, his eyes blazing with killing intent. In terms of ruling and management of a nation, he was the most experienced, and also the one with the most killing intent and the most domineering among the four brothers. Ling Han smiled slightly. As long as he had enough strength, then everything could be easily suppressed. There was at least one advantage of being a vassal of a majestic empire, and that was that the nation's safety was guaranteed. It would not be easily invaded by other nations, and even if it was invaded, it could ask for help from the suzerain, just like the Eastern Reign nation before. Thus, the possibility of the Great Ling Empire facing foreign enemies was not high, but if there was internal turmoil in their own nation, the Chaotic Star's majestic empire would not be so free to interfere. In any case, it would be fine as long as this territory was still a vassal of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. This was an internal matter, and outsiders would naturally not interfere easily. Ling Han said, "Brothers, these are all small matters. Today is a happy day, so let's not talk about these things. Let's drink until we're drunk. Let's drink until we're drunk." Feng Peyun and the others were also generous people, so they immediately raised their cups and drank to their heart's content. It was rare for Ling Han to get drunk. When he woke up the next morning, he found that he was already lying on the bed, and in his arms was a stunningly beautiful woman. Who else could it be but Shui Yenyu? He paled in shock, and asked, "Did we do that yesterday?" Shui Yenyu was both embarrassed and annoyed. She rolled her eyes at him, and said, "Last night, you were drunk. I helped you into the room, but you held on to me and refused to let go, so I could only stay here." What she meant was that he was so drunk that he did not do anything. Ling Han breathed a sigh of relief, and said, "That's good, that's good. If the first time was so muddle-headed, then it would be too much of a loss, Pa." Shui Yenyu immediately threw a pillow over, smashing it into his face. "Io, wife, is it because I didn't do it with you yesterday that you're not satisfied? Are you feeling resentful?" asked Ling Han with a smile. Shui Yenyu was about to explode in fury. This pervert, this damn hooligan, he still had the cheek to say such things. Shwa, shwa, shwa. She threw whatever she had in her possession. First, it was the other pillow, then the blanket, then even the cup and the tea tray were hurled at Ling Han. Meanwhile, Ling Han quickly caught it, and tossed it onto the bed. When Shui Yenyu discovered that there was nothing else to smash, he chuckled, and pounced on Shui Yenyu like a tiger, pinning this seductive beauty beneath his body. "Tisk, tsk, tsk. I really admire myself," he said, intoxicated. "What's there to admire?" Shui Yenyu felt uncomfortable being pressed down by him. Her eyes were watery, and her body had also become as soft as spring water. "Under my hard work, you seem to have grown a little bigger," Ling Han said with a naughty smile. He grabbed lightly, and Shui Yenyu let out an enchanting moan. "Damn hooligan." Shui Yenyu's face flushed red. Why did this bad guy always like to grab her breasts? Weren't they just two lumps of flesh? The other parts of her body weren't flesh at all. Woo! Her whispers were lost in Ling Han's passionate kisses, and she was soon aroused by Ling Han. She took the initiative to wrap her jade arms around Ling Han's neck, kissing him intensely. Peng, peng, peng. At this crucial moment, there was a knock on the door. Ling Han was furious. Who was it? He was just about to eat this bewitching woman. "Little Han, get up and pee." Helian Tianyun's snickering came from outside the door. "Fuck, I knew it was this old pervert." Ling Han sighed, and looked at Shui Yenyu who quickly fled. He knew that he wouldn't be able to eat a bewitching woman today. Moreover, this woman was super shy, and would probably avoid him as much as possible in the next few days. If he wanted to eat her again, he'd have to wait a few more days. Forget it, he'd take care of business first. Ling Han went out, and called over his 3 brothers, Ding Ping, and Helian Tianyun, and began to teach them the cultivation techniques of the immortal realm. Because the Universal 8 Desolation technique was taught by Old Man Su, it was not good for Ling Han to teach them in private without his permission. Thus, the cultivation technique he taught Helian Tianyun was something he had obtained from an auction. Although it was not a top-grade cultivation technique, it was definitely better than what he had obtained from the Scarlet Heaven Academy. Moreover, the cultivation techniques of the Scarlet Heaven Academy could not be taught in private. This was a prohibition. Moreover, Ling Han could not afford to exchange for high-grade cultivation techniques. Brothers, you are not the main force in splitting open the skies, so your strength cannot possibly reach 20 stars. However, 19 stars and 18 stars are still possible. I hope that you can all cultivate to the point where you cannot advance an inch further, and then break through to the immortal level, Ling Han said. N. Feng Peyun and the others all nodded. They were all ambitious people, and naturally were not willing to become ordinary immortals. If they wanted to cultivate, they would cultivate to become invincible among their peers. This time, it was not like when Ling Han had just entered the Chaotic Star's majestic empire, and did not have any cultivation resources. On the contrary, the things that Ling Han took out this time would not be the slightest bit inferior to the wealth of an elite of the heavenly body tier. After all, it was only a treasure at the peak of humanity, and no matter how expensive it was limited, and the Jade Heaven pill that Ling Han concocted was extremely profitable, earning money at an astonishing speed. Helian Tianyun sighed. He was a descendant of the dragon race, and had the advantage of bloodline. He had only stayed in the immortal realm for a few days, and he had broken through to the immortal level by relying on his bloodline. Thus, he could not cultivate his strength to the limit, which made him feel some regret. Unfortunately, it was impossible to sever this life and live a third life because of this. Where would there be so many precious treasures for him to squander? Treasures that could allow the soul to reincarnate were pitifully rare in the immortal realm. Thankfully, the power of 16 stars was not considered weak. After all, the Shattering Void tier was only one part of the long journey of cultivation, and could not possibly completely decide a cultivator's future. Ling Han was generous with resources. He wanted to help his 3 brothers advance into the immortal level in the shortest time possible, and this was under the premise that their foundations were incredibly solid. Then, he turned his attention to Ding Ping. He had taken in this disciple, but he had not taught him for a long time. This master was really incompetent. Thus, after reflecting, he began to train Ding Ping. Ding Ping was miserable. Inside the Black Tower, he continued to scream in agony. His cries were extremely tragic, and could practically make anyone who heard them tremble in fear. It was too frightening. In a few days, the reincarnation tree will completely grow. Ling Han smiled. This was his greatest secret treasure. Comprehending Tao under the reincarnation tree, one moment was equivalent to a lifetime. It was practically like cheating. The cultivation of origin power and physical strength could be improved through alchemical pills and natural treasures, but one could only rely on oneself to comprehend Tao. The reincarnation tree, on the other hand, could infinitely shorten the time needed to comprehend Tao, or in other words, extend it. Master, can I rest for a while? Ding Ping asked with a bitter expression. He was carrying a large rock, and on the rock sat Ling Han. It was incredibly heavy, causing his arms to constantly tremble. That was because Ling Han had used the divine patterns of gravity. Of course, it was only a tiny bit. Otherwise, Ding Ping, who was only in the spiritual infant tier, would not be able to withstand it at all. No, I have to run another 3 rounds. Chapter 1081. Ding Ping screamed in pain every day under Ling Han's training, but his improvement was also obvious. He had some kind of bloodline, or perhaps he was blessed with some kind of powerful physique that could increase his power by 100-fold. This was very terrifying. Just this ability alone could allow him to have battle prowess that surpassed 2 stars in the immortal level. Permanent. The difference in power between each subminor level should be about 10 times, so a 100-fold explosion could make up for the difference of 2 subminor levels. This also showed how big the difference was between each level in the immortal level. That was why there were so few geniuses that surpassed 4 stars, and 5-star geniuses only existed in legends. Ling Han wanted to squeeze out all of Ding Ping's potential, and teach him a brilliant disciple. 4 days later, the reincarnation tree finally grew completely. The crown of the tree reached 300 meters, and the aura of great Tao flowed between the branches and leaves. It was mysterious, powerful, and simple. Ling Han had clearly watched it grow, but it gave him a feeling as if this tree had already experienced the vicissitudes of millions and millions of years. The reincarnation tree that needed 12 trillion years to grow had grown just like that. The Black Tower was even more awesome. Ling Han sighed ruefully. His rise couldn't be done without the help of the Black Tower. Otherwise, even if he didn't die in his last life, he could only be an alchemy emperor now. As for martial art, because his early foundation was too pitiful, his achievements would definitely be limited. This reincarnation tree didn't grow normally, but was hastened by me using mysterious source power, so the effect is slightly weaker. Small Tower appeared, and explained to Ling Han, comprehending Tao under the tree is far from reaching the level of a lifetime, but a day is equivalent to a year. This was impressive enough. After another 10 years, the leaves can be plucked and made into tea leaves, and the effect is slightly better. Probably drinking a cup will allow you to obtain 10 years' worth of spiritual comprehension. Unfortunately, my source power has been exhausted again, and I can't hasten it any further. Ling Han was already beyond delighted, and said, enough, this is already impressive enough. That's because you're a frog in a well, and don't know that there are many treasures that can hasten time. Small Tower probably let the cat out of the bag, and hurriedly shut its mouth. I'm going to repair the Black Tower, don't bother me if there's nothing important. As it spoke, it disappeared with a swoosh. No matter how Ling Han called out, it refused to reappear. Fuck, I'm still the master. That's too disrespectful. Ling Han bared his teeth. This little tower was really too arrogant. No matter what, I need to improve the strength of the people around me first. Ling Han brought Shui Yenyu, Feng Peyun, and the others into the Black Tower so that they could comprehend Tao under the reincarnation tree. This is crazy. At their level, the only thing they lacked was time to comprehend the Tao. However, a day under the reincarnation tree was equivalent to a year. What kind of concept was this? Even a stupid pig could cultivate to become a true god. Originally, it was the speed at which they comprehended the mysteries of heaven and earth that could not keep up with the improvement of their elemental energy and physical strength. Now, however, it was the exact opposite. Their spiritual cultivation had surpassed their physical bodies, and it was their physical bodies that were dragging them down. Fortunately, Ling Han was the alchemy emperor. If he couldn't keep up with his normal cultivation, then he could just ingest pills. In any case, he was comprehending Tao under the reincarnation tree, so he didn't have to worry about his cultivation advancing too quickly. However, the first to break through was Ling Han. He was already at the peak stage of the medium extreme, and now with the help of the reincarnation tree, his comprehension speed was practically like the speed of light. If an ordinary genius wanted to take this step, it would take at least a few hundred years. Even if Ling Han was a super genius, he would still need a few dozen years, right? But under the reincarnation tree, a few dozen years was only a few dozen days. Most importantly, Ling Han's physical strength and the essence of a demonic master solved the problem of accumulating origin power. With these two factors working in tandem, why would his cultivation level not soar? He steered the cloud-piercing shuttle and left the Great Ling Empire ahead of time, heading to an uninhabited wasteland to undergo the heavenly tribulation. Since there were undercurrents surging in the Great Ling Empire, and there were people who wanted to rebel, then he would give them a chance. Otherwise, if these ambitious people lay dormant, then the harm they would cause in the future would be even greater. Thus, Ling Han strictly sealed off the news of his return. Now, he naturally couldn't choose to undergo the heavenly tribulation in the great Ling Empire. Advancing a minor level was practically torture for Ling Han now. He had to shatter his own body so that his godly bones could be tempered by the heavenly tribulation to advance another level. This caused him to scream repeatedly. If Ding Ping heard this, he would definitely feel much more at ease. This freak of a master actually had times where he could scream so miserably. Half a day later, the heavenly tribulation dissipated. Ling Han used a drop of indestructible true fluid, and his body instantly recovered. He felt that his power had skyrocketed, and his godly bones were incredibly hard, reaching the level of level 4 godly metal. Now, though I can't suppress an opponent at the peak stage of the consummate level, I'm completely unafraid. Even if it's a battle of attrition, I can still exhaust my opponent to death, Ling Han said with a smile. His defense and recovery ability were practically at the level of a scoundrel. As long as he couldn't be insta-killed, then his opponent would definitely despair. Aside from Ling Han, the Rain Emperor's improvement was the fastest. His talent was practically no weaker than Ling Han's. It was just that he wasn't as lucky as Ling Han, who had obtained the Black Tower. 2 months later, the Rain Emperor's power advanced to 19 stars of Shattering Void tier. The might of the reincarnation tree was completely displayed. The Rain Emperor began to comprehend the secrets of the immortal level, and with Ling Han and Shui Yenyu's explanation, with the Rain Emperor's talent, he definitely wouldn't need a few days to cross over. Of course, a few days of comprehension under the reincarnation tree was equivalent to a few years of comprehension. Another dozen or so days later, Feng Peyun's power also advanced to 18 stars of Shattering Void tier, and Mu Rongqing's was 17 stars. This could also show the difference in talent between the 4 brothers. The Rain Emperor and Ling Han were almost equal, Feng Peyun was slightly inferior, and Mu Rongqing was slightly inferior. But even so, Shui Yenyu was shocked. That was the power of 17 stars of Shattering Void tier, and the battle prowess he could display was at least 22 stars, or even stronger. How many such geniuses could be found in the Chaotic Star's majestic empire? The tiny Great Ling Empire had 4. Moreover, Helian Tianyun had also reached 16 stars, which was still very terrifying, and Ling Han's disciple Ding Ping was also a little monster. He could explode his power 100 times, and if he could also reach 18 or 19 stars of Shattering Void tier before breaking through, then after he advanced into the immortal level, his battle prowess could even surpass 6 stars. 6 stars, just thinking about it made Shui Yenyu feel terrified. That was because 5-star geniuses only existed in legends, and now there was actually a 6-star genius. Even Ling Han couldn't compare to him. Ling Han wouldn't be jealous of his own disciple. Moreover, power was only the most important part of battle prowess, and not the whole. He believed that if the Rain Emperor and Ding Ping battled at the same cultivation level, the one who would lose would definitely be Ding Ping. If it was him, Ding Ping would have even less of a chance to win. The freakish physique and recovery ability were unbeatable. Moreover, Ling Han discovered that his current power was becoming greater and greater. The 9 Dragons Tyrant Body Art and Universal 8 Desolation Technique were both supreme secret techniques, causing his physical strength to explode and his origin power to be refined. He could vaguely feel that his pure power had reached the height of 5 stars. Another few days later, the Rain Emperor, Feng Peyun, and Mu Rongqing broke through to the Mountain River Tier 1 after another. The Great Ling Empire finally had a sliver of the appearance of a majestic empire. Chapter 1082. In terms of the number of realms he had surpassed, Ding Ping was the one who had improved the fastest. He had just reached the spiritual infant tier, but after 3 months, he had reached the Shattering Void tier, which was a total of 3 major cultivation levels, and a leap of almost 30 minor levels. Even in the immortal realm, this speed of improvement would make one's scalp go numb. Apart from Ling Han, was there a second person who possessed a reincarnation tree? Although it was only 3 months, Ding Ping had truly comprehended for almost 90 years. Of course, the reincarnation tree could only allow one's mind to comprehend, and the physical body would remain at its original level, so it couldn't really be counted as 90 years. However, if converted, it would definitely be over 30 years. Ding Ping was now full of confidence. He wanted to surpass his 3 uncles in cultivation level, and truly share Ling Han's worries and difficulties. The scene of Ling Han being taken away still lingered in his mind. He didn't want to be separated from his master in such a way. He was willing to endure hardship, and with talent and resources, Ding Ping naturally improved rapidly. On the contrary, after advancing into the immortal level, the Rain Emperor, Helian Tianyun, and the others' cultivation speed slowed down. It was possible that Ding Ping would surpass them, or at least catch up. The faster his people improved, the happier Ling Han was. He smiled, and said, "Third brother, you'll most likely be caught up by that brat Ding Ping. Eldest brother is also in danger, and second brother is the most talented. If that brat Ding Ping doesn't have some special opportunity, he probably won't be able to catch up." Mu Rongqing couldn't help but scream. As a senior, being surpassed by a junior was too embarrassing. "Fourth brother, you must give me special treatment, or else I won't let you off." He pulled Ling Han, and just thinking about it was terrifying. Everyone couldn't help but laugh. "Third uncle, just wait to be surpassed by me." Ding Ping still carried a giant rock on his back, which was inscribed with a divine pattern of gravity. He was now addicted to carrying rocks, and even when he slept, he would press one on his back. Everyone laughed at him for transforming into a turtle. There was another person who improved greatly, and that was the rock spirit. In this more than a year, the rock spirit almost didn't improve, and was still in the shattering void tier. However, with Ling Han's return, it naturally had rocks to eat again. After eating continuously for more than 2 months, it turned into a stone ball as if hibernating, and didn't move for many days. But just a few days ago, it finally ushered in a breakthrough and stepped into the divine realm. 5 element beings were different from demonic beasts. Demonic beasts could transform into human form after reaching the god realm, while rock spirits had always been in human form. It was just that their bodies were piled up with rocks. After entering the immortal state, it was finally able to speak. But the rock spirit didn't like to talk. It was still the same as before, and liked to bite the leg of Ling Han's pants and act cute. This made the Azura Demon Emperor feel very disdainful. "You're not a fuck you dog, so why are you acting like a dog?" "Woof, woof," he squeezed the stone spirit. Why was this guy always fighting with him? He was the big dog, okay. Ling Han didn't just improve the strength of the Rain Emperor and the others. He had also given the guards in the palace a large amount of spirit medicines, and their strength had improved significantly. However, they didn't have the right to enter into the Black Tower and cultivate under the reincarnation tree. After all, the use of the reincarnation tree was limited. At present, it could only support the cultivation of 10 people at the same time. Even so, the strength of the guards in the palace had also improved significantly. In the past, they were basically in the flower blossom tier, and now they were all advancing towards the spiritual infant tier. Moreover, this had all happened in a short period of 3 months, which was very astonishing. "Ding Ping, go home and stay for a few days. At most, we'll be going to the Chaotic Star's majestic empire in a month. Then, who knows when we'll be back again," Ling Han said to his disciple. Ding Ping actually didn't want to go back. To him, the Ding clan wasn't a home. It was only the place where he was born and lived. But since his master had said so, he didn't dare disobey. So, he packed up and set off for home. The present Ding Ping was no longer the useless youth from before. Instead, he was the personal disciple of the current emperor. His own cultivation level had also reached a considerable height. At present, no one in the Ding clan knew that he was already in the shattering void tier. However, the spiritual infant tier was still high and mighty for most people. Thus, when he returned to the Ding clan, he naturally received a warm welcome from the Ding clan. However, some people's expressions were slightly cold, and even unfriendly, which made Ding Ping's heart skip a beat. He naturally knew that there were dark waves surging in the imperial court now. There were forces secretly plotting to overthrow the Great Ling Empire and establish their own kingdom. He hated this to the bone. When his master had successfully split open the sky, everyone had escaped the persecution of the 5 sects, and avoided the fate of being refined into a human pill. Even his master had been captured as a hostage, but these people were actually ungrateful, and wanted to rebel when his master wasn't around. Putting aside the fact that there was such trash in the Ding clan, if there was, he would definitely get rid of them with his own hands. Hee, Ding Ping, come. Come to the side and say a few words. An old man waved at Ding Ping. His name was Ding Chang, and he was a powerful figure in the Ding clan. He was also an elder. When he was in the small world, he was in the flower blossom tier. At first, he thought that he would die of old age at this cultivation level, but unexpectedly, when Ling Han split open the sky, he also benefited from it. In the last 2 years, he had advanced into the spiritual infant tier, and could live for another 200 years. At first, he didn't have any ambition, but being able to live for another 200 years caused his heart to stir. 7th great-grandfather. Ding Ping had been influenced by Ling Han, and though he didn't have a good impression of the clan, he still maintained a considerable amount of respect for his elders. Ding Chang nodded, taking advantage of his seniority. In his opinion, no matter how capable Ding Ping was, he was still a junior of the Ding clan, and should listen to him. He pointed at the seat in front of him, and said, "Sit." When Ding Ping sat down, he said seriously, "Ping, it's been almost 2 years since His Majesty left, right?" Ding Ping's heart skipped a beat, but he didn't show it on his face. Calm and steady, this was what Ling Han had taught him a long time ago. He only nodded, and said, "Master has indeed left for almost 2 years. Ping, there's a saying that a country can't be without a ruler for a day." Ding Chang chuckled, and his old eyes suddenly shone with a shocking brilliance. This was a yearning for power, and this old man was like a little boy seeing a beautiful woman for the first time, extremely excited. "What do you mean, 7th great-grandfather?" Ding Ping asked after some thought. Ding Chang chuckled and said, "You are His Majesty's only disciple. Now that His Majesty has left and never returned, shouldn't you be the one to inherit the throne?" Whoosh, Ding Ping immediately stood up, and said, "7th great-grandfather, be careful with your words. What kind of attitude is that?" Ding Chang flew into a rage. Was this brat trying to rebel? He actually dared to speak to him in such a tone. "7th great-grandfather, you're drunk." Ding Ping flicked his sleeve and was about to leave. "Stop!" Ding Chang slammed the table. Ding Ping ignored him and continued forward. "Ha, young man, your elders told you to stop. Didn't you hear them?" A figure suddenly appeared and blocked Ding Ping's path. "It's not a good habit to disrespect your elders." Ding Ping focused his gaze on the other party. This was also a young man, at most 24 or 25 years old. He carried a long sword on his back and exuded an astonishing sword intent. It was as if the sword was him, and he was the sword. "Who are you?" Ding Ping asked in a low voice. The other party gave him great pressure, and his realm was definitely not lower than his. Shattering Void Tear. Chapter 1084. Ding Ping vs Zhang Mo. In terms of cultivation base, Ding Ping was 6 levels behind Zhang Mo. However, after using all kinds of techniques, his battle prowess was not inferior to Zhang Mo's. In fact, due to his endless stamina and the endless power of the nation, he was able to outlast Zhang Mo by far. The two of them battled, and the Ding clan was quickly reduced to ruins. At least 1/3 of the clansmen were killed by the shockwaves of the battle. The more Zhang Mo fought, the more apprehensive he became. He had thought that he would be able to take down Ding Ping with ease. He did not expect Ding Ping's combat prowess to be so strong. If this went on, he might even lose. It drove him crazy. If he couldn't beat Ling Han, then so be it. After all, that guy was a freak. Even his master's master, and even the geniuses from the god world couldn't beat him. But now, even his disciple was so ferocious. How could he endure this? I really didn't think that not only is Ling Han freakishly talented, but even the disciple he took in can't be underestimated. A beautiful woman descended from the skies. There were actually 2 wings on her back, and with a light flap, it allowed her to fly in the skies. In a small world, these 2 wings were not very useful. After all, one only needed to advance into the flower blossom tier to be able to fly, but in the immortal realm, it was different. Only those at the heavenly body tier would be able to understand the secrets of heaven and earth, and be able to roam the skies. How many heavenly body tier elites did Joint Peace Planet have? Thus, having wings in the god realm meant that one could realize their dream of flying millions of years earlier than others. Dong Ling was an outstanding disciple of the Cloud Phoenix sect. Due to the spiritual chi environment of the immortal realm, as well as the fact that they had come by opening the sky, those geniuses had received the blessing of the heaven and earth, so they definitely couldn't compare to Ling Han and the others. They were more or less like ordinary commoners, and now, they had all become existences in the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier. What are you saying? Help me suppress this kid, Zhang Mo said with dissatisfaction. Wasn't there someone who was full of confidence and said that he didn't need any help? Dong Ling smiled. Her battle prowess wasn't any weaker than Zhang Mo's, and she also had the ability to fly. Naturally, she wasn't afraid that Ding Ping would escape. You don't say. Why don't you give it a try yourself? Zhang Mo snorted. This brat's strength wasn't any weaker than Ling Han's. His monstrous strength was so great that even Zhang Mo didn't dare to take it head-on. Dong Ling did not continue bickering, and directly joined the battle. A long night is fraught with trouble. Let's quickly deal with this brat. After all, there are still a few Shattering Void tier elites in the Imperial capital. There's no need to fear Shattering Void tier cultivators, Zhang Mo said. However, we do need to be wary of that old dragon. Many seniors have already entered the god realm. If we join hands, that old dragon is nothing. Dong Ling attacked mercilessly. Her every move was aimed at crippling Ding Ping. In any case, they only needed a puppet to sit on the throne for the time being. Whether the puppet had cultivation or not naturally did not matter. As Ding Ping listened, his heart was in turmoil. He knew that the other party was purposely saying this for him to hear. His goal was to destroy his fighting spirit. However, they had never imagined that Ling Han would suddenly return. Moreover, he had only used a mere 3 months to create 4 Mountain River tier elites. At present, there were close to 10 immortal level forces in the Imperial capital. Moreover, the battle prowess of Ling Han and the Azura Demon Emperor were both at the consummate level of the Mountain River tier. In the god world, the difference in cultivation level was so great that Ling Han could suppress everyone with a single finger. Hold on. Ding Ping said in his heart. If he were to escape, would the other party grow fearful and delay the time of their attack? Master did not have the time to stay here and play with these small fries. Their journey was the entire immortal realm. It's decided. Ding Ping suddenly retreated. He only defended, and said, I'm willing to cooperate with you. However, you have to promise not to injure or cripple me. Dong Ling and Zhang Mo exchanged a look. Why did this brat suddenly become a coward? Is it because he knows that he can't survive their combined attack? Everyone is afraid of death. Moreover, this brat is only a teenager. He is proud of his youth, so he naturally does not want to die. Fine. The 2 of them nodded. In any case, it was only a Shattering Void tier cultivator. As long as they brought him back, there would be many immortal level elites. This wasn't a small world, where immortal level elites would be restricted and unable to display their full strength. In front of immortal level power, shattering void tier cultivators were trash. Ding Ping remained silent, and left with them. Dong Ling, and Zhang Mo did not forcibly restrain him. Both sides showed some sincerity. They traveled over mountains and rivers, and actually entered a bustling city. The headquarters of the 5 sects was here. Sure enough, the great sects hid in the city. Previously, the Rain Emperor and the others had been searching for the remnants of the 5 sects in the mountains and seas. Who would have thought that they would be living so openly in a bustling city? Under the guidance of Dong Ling, and Zhang Mo, they entered a large manor. There was a natural lake inside, and the water rippled. The environment was very beautiful. A wise man submits to circumstances. The Sword King appeared. However, he had already advanced into the mountain river tier. He did not deliberately restrain his aura, and the sword intent he exuded was almost tangible. It formed a circle of sword projections around him, and any one of them could kill a shattering void tier cultivator. He had already heard about the situation from Dong Ling, and Zhang Mo, so he did not have too many doubts. After all, only a short 2 years had passed. Ling Han definitely could not have returned, and the strength of the imperial capital would not have increased significantly. On the contrary, how many people had the 5 sects used the time source fluid to seal in these 10,000 years? Now that they had entered the immortal realm, at least 1/10 of them had broken through, and they now had almost 40 immortal level elites. This was a sweeping force. The only one they were wary of was Hellion Tianyun. That old dragon was very freakish, and had advanced into the mountain river tier, so his battle prowess would definitely be astonishing. "Tell us everything you know," the Sword King said. He wanted to understand Hellion Tianyun's situation as much as possible so that he could formulate a perfect countermeasure. Ding Ping did not hide anything, and revealed the information about Hellion Tianyun from more than 3 months ago. It was so detailed that even the Sword King was a little surprised. "You are too spineless, aren't you? We didn't even torture you, and you already confessed everything." The 5 sects also had some information about Hellion Tianyun. They compared it with what Ding Ping had said, and found that Ding Ping was not lying at all. They believed Ding Ping's information, and thought that Ding Ping was too young, so he was afraid of death. Since Ding Ping was so cooperative, they did not make things difficult for him. Perhaps they could take him in as a dog in the future. After all, he was also in the Shattering Void tier. They agreed that 10 days later, they would launch an all-out attack on the imperial capital. In the last half a year, they had already linked up with a great many forces, and they only lacked the final blow. Time passed very quickly, and 10 days had passed. Ding Ping obediently led the others and set out, opening the city gates and the main doors of the imperial palace. They quietly entered the imperial palace, and wave after wave of forces also appeared, joining the great army to seize power. After all, ruling a nation was definitely not something that could be done by a few dozen or a few hundred people. The troops soon gathered to the size of a few thousand people, their momentum fierce. Chapter 1085. A large group of people charged into the imperial palace, and the guards actually didn't even dare to resist, retreating all the way. This made the attackers all proud. They were too powerful, causing people to flee at the mere sight of them. Though the elites of the 5 sects didn't believe that the imperial palace's power was really so weak, they didn't care. After all, they had mobilized their strongest force this time, with as many as 37 immortal level elites. So what if it was Hellion Tianyun? They could deal with him with 30 people, and the remaining 7 would be able to sweep through them. If it wasn't for the fact that ruling a nation wasn't something a few people could accomplish, they wouldn't need the assistance of these forces at all. They didn't even have a Shattering Void tier elite. One side was unstoppable, and the other side was utterly routed. Ding Ping naturally knew that this was Ling Han and the others cooperating with him, wanting to capture all the rebels in one fell swoop as much as possible. This time, there wouldn't be any future trouble left. Not long after, this army pushed into the depths of the imperial palace, arriving in front of the Hall of Righteous Harmony. This was the center of the entire imperial palace, the meeting hall, and the totem stood above this hall. This hall was the symbol of the great Ling Empire's power, and once it fell, it would be a great blow to the nation. Thus, even if they wanted to lure the snake out of its hole, they couldn't retreat anymore now that they were here. Feng Peyun, the Rain Emperor, Mu Rongqing, Helian Tianyun, and the others appeared one after another, standing at the very front. Meanwhile, the guards of the palace stood behind the four of them. They all drew their sabers, revealing their determination to fight to the death. He, a bunch of useless people, an elder of the 5 sects said. His name was Situ Jian, and he had been sealed for thousands of years. Even when Ma Duobao attacked the 5 sects, he wasn't awakened because many people weren't buried in the 5 sections. He was awakened in the immortal realm, so he naturally didn't know how powerful Ling Han was. He only felt that his juniors were too weak, unable to even deal with a country bumpkin. Mutt, report your name. Helian Tianyun shouted. Among everyone, his mouth was the most venomous. Ha, so what if it's a descendant of a true dragon? Its battle prowess can only surpass 4 stars at most. Could it be that it can become a legendary 5-star genius? Situ Jian waved his hand. According to the plan, we'll first suppress the evil dragon's true dragon bloodline. That's a great supplement. Immediately, 29 people took a few steps forward and stood together with Situ Jian. They had naturally come up with a strategy long ago, and they knew who would deal with Helian Tianyun. Tisk, TSK, 30 elites in the early stage of the low extreme of the mountain river tier. Helian Tianyun chuckled coldly. However, you are wrong about one thing, because I am not the only immortal level elite on our side. Feng Peyun, the Rain Emperor, Mu Rongqing, and the Rock Spirit all took a step forward at the same time. They no longer suppressed their auras, and the pressure unique to immortals instantly enveloped the whole area. What? The 5 sects and their lackeys all exclaimed in shock. Why had the Great Ling Empire suddenly gained 4 immortal level elites? This had greatly disrupted their plans. Humph, you people, how has the Great Ling Empire wronged you? The Rain Emperor asked. Back then, if it were not for 4th brother opening the sky, you all could only stay in the small world and wait for death, and be refined into a realm pill. But now, you people are actually mingling with the people of the 5 sections. Who are you letting down? Being questioned like this, many people looked ashamed, but even more people smirked coldly. As the saying went, a wise man submits to circumstances. Ling Han had been captured as a hostage, and the Great Ling Empire only had 1 immortal level elite. Fine, now it had become 5. However, compared to the 5 sects, this number was definitely not on the same level. Then tell me, should we die together with the Great Ling Empire, or share the riches and honor with the 5 sects? This was the immortal realm, and they no longer had to worry about being refined into a realm pill. Thus, there was no fundamental conflict between them and the 5 sects, so there was naturally room for cooperation. This is a little unexpected, but you people have just advanced into the immortal level. Another 5 immortal level elites will be enough. Though Situ Jian was shocked, he quickly recovered. He wasn't the strongest elite of the 5 sects, but he was the most senior. Thus, he became one of the commanders of this group. Do you only have this many people? The Rain Emperor's eyes swept over them. He had long sensed the turbulence hidden beneath the calm surface of the imperial capital, and the rebel forces that had appeared now were also within his expectations. In fact, there were even a few forces that had hidden themselves very well previously, and hadn't given themselves away. However, was this all they had? It's more than enough to deal with scattered soldiers like you. Situ Jian smirked coldly. But before that, we have to first kill a disobedient person. His eyes turned to Ding Ping. The Great Ling Empire actually still had 4 immortal level elites, but Ding Ping didn't reveal any of this, so it was obvious that he was deliberately deceiving them. Kill him, and it'll be a good sacrifice for the flag, Situ Jian said coldly. He was a radical, and thought that after the Rain Emperor and the others were eliminated, they could directly change the flag of the Great Ling Empire. There was no need to set up any puppets to make the transition. However, he was only one of the commanders, after all, so he couldn't make a decision by himself. But now that Ding Ping had set them up, it just happened to give him an excuse to make his move. Peng Ding Ping was thrown out. Though his battle prowess was strong, in front of immortal level power, he was completely powerless. Kneel. Situ Jian said coldly. He wanted to behead Ding Ping in front of everyone. Pay. Ding Ping spat, not the slightest bit afraid. I'm telling you to kneel. Situ Jian raised his voice, his eyes sinister. He released the aura unique to immortals, wanting to crush Ding Ping's spirit and make him submit. Hee, are you threatening my disciple? Ling Han's voice sounded. N. Yeah. The Sword King, Azure Phoenix Divine Empress, and the others all revealed expressions of shock. They had all suffered at the hands of Ling Han, and were extremely familiar with his voice. Instantly, they felt their scalps go numb. Meanwhile, Situ Jian walked towards the source of the voice, and shouted, Who? Ling Han walked out, a calm smile on his face. Who are you? Situ Jian asked again. Ling Han. The Sword King and the others of the older generation, as well as Zhang Mo and the others of the younger generation, all exclaimed in shock. They had all been traumatized by Ling Han. Just now, they had already felt their scalps go numb, and now, they were directly trembling. Being able to frighten immortal level and shattering void tier cultivators like this, it was clear how great of an impact Ling Han had on these people. You are Ling Han? Situ Jian asked Ling Han. He had not experienced the Ling Han era, so he naturally did not know how terrifying Ling Han was, nor could he imagine it. Pa! His figure flashed, and a fist shot out. Situ Jian's head instantly exploded, and he became a headless corpse. The scene was deathly silent. Although Situ Jian was not the strongest immortal among the 5 sects, he was still an immortal no matter what. He had actually been killed with a single punch. Hiss, what kind of joke was this? Ling Han withdrew his fist, cracked a smile, and said, Since everyone is here, then let's settle our debts in one go. Chapter 1086. Ling Han had returned, and he was incredibly powerful. The members of the 5 sects had long since been traumatized by Ling Han's attack. When he appeared, they were already shivering and feeling numb. Moreover, Situ Jian's head had been blown apart with a single punch. This caused a chill to rise in their hearts, and they wanted nothing more than to turn and flee. Ling Han. The Sword King stepped forward. Although he was a rising star in the 5 sects, his strength was truly extraordinary. Sword cultivators were known for their powerful attacks, and his battle prowess could definitely rank in the top 10, or even top 5. Pa! Ling Han's figure flashed, and his fist shot out. The Sword King's head was also blown off. Gasp, he killed someone just because they didn't agree with him. How cruel. Ling Han, you've gone too far. You should know that our ancestral ground has elites of the Sun-Moon tier, the heaven-shattering saber said harshly. Pa, he had just finished speaking when his head was also blown off. He had killed 3 people in a row with a single punch, without any hesitation or mercy. How decisive was he? The members of the 5 sects were all scared. They didn't even see how Situ Jian and the others died. They only saw his figure flash, and they died one after another. If it had been them, they definitely wouldn't have been able to block or dodge it. Too terrifying. Zhang Mo and the others of the younger generation were all shivering in fear. It had only been 2 years, and Ling Han had grown to such a terrifying level. What cultivation level are you at now? The Azure Phoenix Divine Empress asked with a bitter expression. I've improved very little. It's a bit embarrassing to say it. Ling Han smiled. High extreme of the mountain river tier, just advanced into the early stage. Pooh! Everyone spluttered. You're showing off, you must be. 2 years ago, they had just opened the sky, and everyone started from the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier. However, the members of the 5 sects still had cultivation techniques from the immortal realm, and only 37 people broke through to the immortal level. But Ling Han? He was really helpless, and he was even captured as a hostage. Are you sure you're really going to be a hostage, and not a slave to Grandpa Ma? Run! Someone shouted first, and immediately, everyone scattered like birds and beasts. The members of the 5 sects were all too aware of how powerful immortals were, and they were even more aware that the difference between each sub-minor level was like the difference between heaven and earth. Thus, 1-star geniuses were all worthy of praise. However, Ling Han had actually advanced to the high extreme now. This was an absolute suppression. To say nothing of the fact that there were only 37 of them, even if there were 370 of them, they would still be completely annihilated. Fight what? You're just sending yourself to death. Kill. Meanwhile, the morale of the Great Ling Empire's side was boiling. Everyone moved, especially the Rain Emperor and the other immortal level elites. They had just broken through to this cultivation level, and their hands were very itchy. Let's go. Azure Phoenix Divine Empress grabbed Dong Ling, and a pair of wings unfurled behind her. She and Dong Ling, both had a special bloodline, and could fly at the mountain river tier, which gave them a great advantage. The Rain Emperor threw a furious punch, and though the Azure Phoenix Divine Empress was barely able to withstand it, she was still sent flying into the skies after all. Now, who could still stop them from leaving? Ling Han, just you wait. Once I find the way back, it'll be the time for the elites of the 5 sects to take your life. Azure Phoenix Divine Empress said harshly. She knew that these 30-odd immortal level elites were not enough in front of the high extreme. This wasn't a battle, but a one-sided massacre. Ling Han shook his head, and said, for her sake, I originally wanted to spare your life, but you're seeking your own death. He used his body as a bow, and drew the annihilating dragon star arrow. Xiao, the arrow light turned into a streak of light, and shot out. What cultivation level was he now? Even if he didn't use a real bow and arrow, and didn't use the ultimate arrow, the annihilating dragon star arrow's power was enough to surpass 5 stars. Merely in the early stage of the low extreme, could he block the battle prowess of the middle stage of the consummate level? Pooh! The arrow light streaked past, and Azure Phoenix Divine Empress and Dong Ling, both screamed in pain. Killed 2 birds with 1 stone, their hearts pierced. The master and disciples' eyes instantly lost their luster, and their beautiful faces dimmed as they both fell from the sky. Ling Han didn't feel any pity. Since they were enemies, then what difference did it make if they were men or women? With him and the Azura Demon Emperor overseeing things, even if the 5 sects had an advantage in terms of the number of elites, so what? They would still only be slaughtered. Moreover, though the Rain Emperor and the others had just broken through, they had comprehended Tao under the reincarnation tree. Which one of them hadn't comprehended Tao for a few decades? Furthermore, they had also received the support of Ling Han's resources, and their cultivation in the Shattering Void tier had almost reached a perfect level. Even Murong Qing had 4 stars of battle prowess, and the Rain Emperor had even reached 5 stars. Actually, there was no need for Ling Han to make a move. Merely his 3 brothers were enough to wipe them out. In a mere hour, the elites of the 5 sects had all been slaughtered. Not only immortal level elites, but Shattering Void tier elites had also naturally come, and all of them had been killed. Your Majesty, spare us. The remaining rebel forces all knelt and begged for mercy. Their cultivation level was too low, and they didn't even have a Shattering Void tier cultivator. In this kind of battle, they wouldn't be of any use at all, and a mere pressure would directly make them kneel on the ground. Who would have thought that Ling Han would actually appear at this time, as powerful as a heaven god? This made them recall the scene when Ling Han had split open the sky. He alone had held up the heavens, and split open the universe, incredibly divine might. They actually wanted to rebel against such a person. Fuck, had water gotten into their heads back then? Take them down and execute them at the Meridian Gate, Ling Han said coldly. There were some bottom lines that couldn't be crossed. Otherwise, how could he rule the country, and how could he convince the masses? With a sweep of his mind, the cultivation of these traitors was all crippled. Like wolves and tigers, the guards charged forward and took these traitors down, all of them deliberately punching and kicking them. These guards naturally hated these traitors to the core. How much had Ling Han done for the lower realm, and they actually dared to rebel while he was away as a hostage? Fuck, they really wanted to kill this bunch of beasts that gave birth to sons without assholes right now. Ling Han sent a message through the totem, announcing his return, and also recounting the whole story of this rebellion. His voice boomed and spread to every corner of the great Ling Empire. Long live the Emperor! His Majesty has returned. The common people were all cheering endlessly. They didn't care who was the emperor. As long as their lives were good, then that was a good emperor. Ling Han freed them from the fate of becoming a realm pill. This was a life-saving grace. He brought them to the immortal realm, where spiritual qi was abundant. Although not everyone could cultivate, in such an environment, not only would they not get sick, their lifespan would also be extended, and living to at least 100 years wouldn't be a problem. This was also a great grace. Who wouldn't respect and love such a good emperor? There were actually heartless beasts that wanted to seize power. Pay! Many people brought eggs, apples, and oranges, and were going to behead those traitors at the Meridian Gate. They were going to embarrass them, and make them infamy for 10,000 years. Ling Han summoned Yu Kaiyu, Qian Wuyong, Hu Fengyu, and other old friends into the imperial palace. Previously, he didn't want to reveal the secret of his return, so he didn't meet with these old friends. Now that he'd dealt with the trash of the 5 sects, he naturally had to meet with these people. He began to deliver alchemical pills to the major sections. Chapter 1088. What happened? Ling Han asked. The student hesitated for a moment, then said, Just now, I passed by the main gate of the Eastern Institution, and saw someone blocked by people from the Eastern Institution. He kept asking to see you, senior brother Ling, see me? Ling Han stroked his chin. Who was this person? He actually went to the Eastern Institution to see him. Who didn't know that the 4 institutions of the Scarlet Heaven Academy were as incompatible as fire and water? This person kept asking to see Ling Han at the main gate of the Eastern Institution. Wasn't this a slap to the face? Obviously, this person knew that he was in the Scarlet Heaven Academy, but didn't know the specifics. That was why he had mistakenly entered the wolf's den. Did that person have any special characteristics? Ling Han asked. The student who had delivered the message thought for a moment, then said, he was quite ordinary. Oh, he always carried a sword in his arms. Huh? Ling Han was startled. Could it be Jin Zhihui, the successor of the Swordforge Manor? He had indeed made an agreement with Jin Zhihui. If he forged the #1 godly sword, he would personally deliver it to him. It had only been a year, and he had already completed it. No matter what, he should go first. Thanks. Ling Han nodded at the student who had delivered the message, then tossed a pill bottle over. The student caught it, pulled out the stopper, and poured out a dark green pill. He instantly looked excited. Senior brother Ling was too generous, giving a heavenly pearl pill for delivering a message. Ling Han strode forward. He couldn't be bothered to go around, and directly entered the territory of the Eastern Institution, then walked towards the main gate of the Eastern Institution. The clothes of the students of the four institutions all had distinctive characteristics. Thus, when Ling Han casually entered the territory of the Eastern Institution, he quickly attracted the attention of the students of the Eastern Institution, and they all stared at him. But they recognized who Ling Han was. Not only was his battle prowess outstanding, but he was also a 7th-rank military general of the empire. Firstly, they might not be able to defeat him, and secondly, no one wanted to offend a genius with a noble title. Thus, they only watched, and followed behind Ling Han as he walked towards the main gate. Seeing that Ling Han's target was the main gate, the students all had strange expressions. Fuck, don't tell me you barged into the Eastern Institution just to take a shortcut. Fuck, aren't you looking down on the Eastern Institution too much? This is a naked slap to the face. All the students were seething with anger. Although Ling Han had not said a single word, nor had he hit a single person, his slap to the face was still resounding. Too high profile, too infuriating, how could he be so arrogant? Ling Han, you're going too far. Finally, a powerful student appeared and blocked Ling Han. By now, everyone knew that Ling Han's cultivation level was at the peak stage of the medium extreme, and his battle prowess could even surpass 5 stars. Thus, his actual battle prowess was at the early stage of the consummate level. If one wanted to block Ling Han, they would have to possess this kind of battle prowess. This student was at the early stage of the Great Perfection realm. He could almost cross half a star, and his strength was still quite formidable. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, I don't want to take a detour. I'm just passing by. This is the Eastern Institution. The student shouted in a stern voice. Regardless of whether it's the Eastern Institution or the Northern Institution, they're both part of the Scarlet Heaven Academy. I can naturally go anywhere, Ling Han said. A sinister expression appeared on the student's face, and he said, since you won't listen to my kind words, I can only use force. He took the initiative to attack Ling Han. According to the rules of the academy, high-level students couldn't take the initiative to attack low-level students. However, who asked Ling Han to barge into the Eastern Institution? He had already barged into their home, so how could the clan leader not retaliate? Thus, so what if he had attacked Ling Han? No matter what, he was in the right. Ling Han clasped his hands behind his back. The instant his opponent's attack reached him, he suddenly moved. His 2 fingers were like swords, and a flash of sword light appeared. Fast technique comprehending Tao under the reincarnation tree, Ling Han's attainments in the fast technique had also reached a very profound level. One had to realize that more than 4 months had passed since the reincarnation tree had matured. In total, more than 120 days had passed, so comprehending Tao under the reincarnation tree would be more than 120 years. Even with a slight discount, it should be at least 50 years, right? With Ling Han's current comprehension ability, wouldn't he be able to grasp the essence of sword techniques after spending 50 years comprehending Tao? Pooh! Blood instantly spurted out of the student's chest. Ling Han didn't stop, and continued to walk toward the door. At this moment, the student's body finally fell to the ground, and he directly fainted. It was unknown whether he had fainted from being beaten or from anger. Too powerful. The other students were all stunned. This senior brother was an elite at the consummate level of the Mountain River tier, yet he had been defeated by a single strike from Ling Han. How terrifying was his strength! Most importantly, Ling Han had only entered the academy for a few years. Most of the students in the same batch as him were still trying to break through to the battle prowess of 20 stars of Shattering Void tier, yet his battle prowess had already soared to the consummate level of the Mountain River tier. This was at least equivalent to the battle prowess of the middle stage of the consummate level. Otherwise, there was no way that he could have insta-killed that senior brother. Instantly, no one dared to make a move. After all, elites at the consummate level wouldn't be so idle. They would be in secluded cultivation all day long. However, if Ling Han really dared to openly pass by, would the Eastern Institution still have the face to see others in the future? Someone immediately went to invite the other senior brothers and sisters of the consummate level division. They had to stop Ling Han no matter what. Very soon, the main door was in sight. Ling Han walked over, and saw that there were indeed a few dozen students standing at the door, surrounding a young man. However, there was no longer a sword in his hand. Who else could it be but Jin Zhihui? Return my sword. Return it to me. Jin Zhihui shouted loudly. Among the students at the door, there was a male student with silver hair. He was holding a sword in his hand, and it was Jin Zhihui who was shouting at him. Senior brother Yang, what do you think of this sword? A student asked. Hee, this guy bragged that this sword is the #1 divine sword in the world. I can't believe it, a student beside the silver-haired male student said. Ha, #1 divine sword in the world? What a joke. The silver-haired male student laughed loudly. He waved the sword, and said, this is only forged from level 1 godly metal. Although I can't tell what material it's made from, it's definitely level 1. Moreover, although there are some divine patterns inscribed on it, they can't be activated. It can't even be considered a level 1 god tool. #1 divine sword in the world. It's basically a useless sword. Jin Zhihui's expression was filled with anger, and he said, this is the #1 divine sword in the world. You don't understand it at all. Return it to me. Haha, although it's a useless sword, now that it's in my hands, I can still joke around with it. The silver-haired male student chuckled coldly. His name was Yang Shuang, and he was a super prodigy of the consummate level division of the Eastern Institution. Press him to the ground. He actually dares to mention Ling Han's name in front of me. He's practically asking for trouble. Okay. A few students immediately rushed over and pressed Jin Zhihui to the ground. They forced him to his knees, and even pressed his head to the ground. Let me go. Return my sword. Jin Zhihui shouted loudly. Ling Han shook his head. This group of people actually dared to treat a disciple of the sword forge manner like this. How could he still ask them to forge swords in the future? He strode over, and said, Brother Jin, long time no see. He was releasing flames of fury. Jin Zhihui had definitely delivered the sword to him as promised, yet he had been humiliated by these people. This caused him to be furious. Ling Han. All the students at the door blurted out. Chapter 1089. In the Scarlet Heaven Academy, Ling Han was definitely a legend. He had only been in the academy for a mere 2 years, yet he had already reached the medium extreme of the mountain river tier. Moreover, his battle prowess was even more astonishing. It was possible that he had reached the level of a legendary 5-star genius. Moreover, his experiences were even more astonishing. He had repeatedly exchanged blows with the only son of the great General Zhao, and he had actually gained the upper hand. In fact, he had even been conferred the title of a 7th-rank military general by the Empress. Such a young 7th-rank military general was unprecedented in the history of the empire. In fact, there were many students in the Eastern Institution who felt that it was a pity. If Ling Han had entered the Scarlet Heaven Academy 5 years later, wouldn't he have become the pride of the Eastern Institution? Yang Shuang faltered for a moment before immediately shouting at Ling Han, you actually dare to come to our Eastern Institution? Ling Han frowned, and said, release him and return the sword. We can talk about other things later. Ha, this person really is your friend. Yang Shuang laughed loudly. He stepped on Jin Zhihui's face, and said, what if I don't? He wasn't afraid of Ling Han. After all, his battle prowess was at the late stage of the consummate level. If Ling Han wanted to fight him, he would definitely be seeking his own humiliation. A cold glint flashed across Ling Han's eyes, and he said, I'll chop off this leg of yours. Yang Shuang laughed madly. This was truly hilarious. Ling Han, are you too full of yourself? Do you think that no one in the academy can subdue you? Yang Shuang pointed his sword at Ling Han. Ling Han didn't reply, and instead strode toward Yang Shuang. His expression was dark, and the flames of his rage had materialized. It was suffocating. Beat him up. Yang Shuang roared. What a joke. This was the Eastern Institution. Go. The students of the Eastern Institution all charged over. Ling Han had actually swaggered his way from the Northern Institution to the Eastern Institution. This was already a humiliating matter, and if they allowed him to return safely, then there would be no need for the students of the Eastern Institution to cultivate anymore. They would all buy a piece of tofu and commit suicide. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 fists were thrown at him at the same time. With a thought from Ling Han, the divine patterns of gravity activated. Pa, 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 pa. These people were unable to approach him at all, and they were immediately pressed to the ground by the terrifying gravitational force. As his cultivation grew higher and higher, the might of the divine rune of gravity naturally grew stronger and stronger. At the very least, it wasn't something that anyone below the consummate level could withstand. As he walked, people fell to the ground, but not a single one of them was able to pose a substantial threat to him. Yang Shuang felt a sense of unease. Now that he was face to face with Ling Han, there were no more obstacles between the two of them. Logically speaking, with his superior combat strength, he shouldn't feel uneasy. But now, there was an indescribable irritation that made him feel uneasy. Kneel down and apologize to Brother Jean. If Brother Jean is willing to forgive you, we'll write off everything. If not, I'll let you know what regret is. Ling Han coldly spoke. Bullshit. Yang Shuang flew into a rage. He pulled back his leg and kicked at Ling Han. Ling Han also kicked out. Peng, the two of them collided, and both of them retreated in retreat. Yang Shuang was stunned, and he said, why you've broken through to the high extreme. Not only that, but Ling Han's power was actually on par with his. This caused his scalp to go numb with shock. He was at the middle stage of the consummate level, and his power was similar to his cultivation level. His battle prowess could surpass 1 star. Ling Han was only at the early stage of the high extreme, but his power was on par with his. What did this mean? That his power had surpassed 5 stars. On Joint Peace Planet, 5-star geniuses only existed in legends. The Empress might be a 5-star genius, but no one had ever proven it. But now, someone had surpassed 5 stars in power alone. How could he not be shocked? If you learned a few more ultimate techniques, wouldn't your battle prowess surpass 6 stars? Moreover, it had only been 2 years, and this guy had actually reached the high extreme? How could there be such a fast speed? Kneel. Ling Han moved, and suppressed Yang Shuang. Don't even think about it. Yang Shuang countered. He definitely wouldn't allow himself to be defeated by Ling Han. Ling Han's fists and palms were like collapsing mountains, and as fierce as fire. He discovered that he had underestimated his own battle prowess. As it turned out, his power had already reached the level of surpassing 5 stars. Added with the divine patterns of gravity and flame, his battle prowess could already reach 6 stars. Moreover, he hadn't even used the annihilating dragon star arrow or the fast technique. His peak battle prowess could definitely reach 7 stars. In a head-on battle, he could even fight a cultivator at the peak stage of the consummate level of the mountain river tier. Added with his physique and recovery ability, he could be said to be invincible among mountain river tier cultivators. If I want to suppress you, you can only be suppressed. Ling Han used the fast technique, and each of his attacks was swift and fierce. Sword chi surged from his fingertips, and it was as if they were flying swords. Yang Shuang screamed in pain. His body was continuously struck, and blood splattered everywhere. Although the injuries weren't severe, the scene was extremely tragic. Even senior brother Yang was being trampled on like this. How many people in the Eastern Institution could be a match for Ling Han? Peng! Ling Han finally knocked Yang Shuang over with a single punch. He snatched the sword from his hand, and then helped Jin Zhihui up. He asked, Brother Jean, are you alright? I'm fine. It's not that severe. Jean Zhihui crawled up. A few of his bones had been broken, but to cultivators, this was nothing. With good alchemical pills, he could recover in a few days. Ling Han nodded. He then turned to Yang Shuang and said, I said I would chop off one of your legs. Don't tell me you thought I was just scaring you. You dare. Yang Shuang was trembling in fear. This is the Eastern institution. If you dare to act so violently, the academy will definitely not let you off. Whoosh! Ling Han unsheathed his sword. Sword light flashed, and one of Yang Shuang's legs was chopped off. This is my friend. Moreover, this sword was specially given to me by my friend. You stole my sword, so it's perfectly reasonable for me to deal with you. I'm already being considerate of the academy by not chopping off your head. Don't you know that stealing from an official of the imperial court is a grave crime? Yang Shuang faltered for a moment. Only then did he know to scream in agony. When he heard Ling Han's words, he felt even more depressed. It was indeed as Ling Han had said. Stealing from an official of the imperial court was a grave crime in the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. However, this matter of stealing the sword could be a big or small one. After all, it hadn't been handed over to Ling Han. If he could suppress Ling Han in battle prowess, would Ling Han still have the face to ask for the sword? However, the problem was that he was actually no match for Ling Han. Thus, he could only swallow his grievance after losing one of his legs. Thankfully, after reaching the immortal level, regrowing severed limbs wasn't difficult. As long as his life force wasn't damaged, he wouldn't be considered crippled. Pa! Ling Han slapped Yang Shuang again, and menacingly said, Do you think this matter will end so easily? Just then, I was only punishing you for stealing my sword. Now, I'm avenging Brother Jean. Pa! Pa! He continuously slapped Yang Shuang. Pu. All of Yang Shuang's teeth were knocked out, and his face was covered in dirty blood. It was a tragic sight. Enough. A young man rushed over, his expression filled with dissatisfaction. Reading on a mobile phone. Chapter 1090. Senior Brother Tang. The students from the Eastern institution were all overjoyed. They had been anxious before, but now they seemed to have found a pillar of support, and all of them regained their confidence. Tang Jiu was ranked 9th among all the students in the Eastern institution. He was at the peak of the consummate level, and he could surpass 3 stars. He was a super genius that only appeared once every 10,000 years. He was called Tang Jiu because he was ranked 9th. A few decades ago, he had been called Tang Shi, but in the future, he would be called Tang Ba, Tang Qi, and so on. Release him, Tang Jiu said coldly. His eyes were as bright as 2 fireballs, and his arms were bare. They were covered in crimson divine patterns that extended from the back of his palms to his shoulders, as if they were made of red metal. He was confident and domineering. These were the characteristics that an elite should have. Ling Han stepped on Yang Shuang. He would treat Yang Shuang the same way Yang Shuang had treated Jean Zhihui just now. An eye for an eye, and he would not be lenient. He looked at Tang Jiu and asked, Why? Because I, Tang Jiu, opened my mouth, Tang Jiu said coldly. He was already furious because the other party still dared to question him. Tang Jiu has never heard of that. Ling Han shook his head. You're courting death. Tang Jiu did not waste any more words and attacked. Shua! A cold light swept past, slicing towards Ling Han's throat. A curved bow had appeared in Tang Jiu's hands, and it emitted a frightening cold light. Ling Han kicked out, lifting Yang Shuang up. Pooh! The cold light immediately hit Yang Shuang's butt, and blood splattered everywhere. Yang Shuang's butt naturally bloomed. He laughed, and said, Tisk, tsk. Are you two having an affair? Why are you aiming at my butt? Yang Shuang looked at Tang Jiu resentfully. Couldn't you aim a little better? Why did you hit me? Tang Jiu was furious, and he pointed at Yang Shuang. If you have the guts, then let's fight to our heart's content. Ling Han shook his head, and said, this isn't a hostage. It's my new treasured sword. You can call it a human sword, but you can also call it a bitch. He grabbed Yang Shuang's neck, and under the infusion of origin power, Yang Shuang's body could only straighten, and he was forcefully turned into a large treasured sword. Yang Shuang felt like dying. All he had done was snatch back Ling Han's sword. Was there really a need to target him like this? Ling Han, you're making me lose. Tang Jiu provoked. Who do you think you are? Do I need to care about you? Ling Han sneered. Tang Jiu immediately flew into a rage. Fine, not only did his provocation fail, he was completely enraged. He hatefully said, you came to our east courtyard to behave atrociously. We definitely won't let you go back in one piece. Junior brother Yang, just accept your bad luck. The Academy's reputation is greater than yours. He was no longer afraid and attacked with all his might. Ling Han swung his sword to block. With his strength, swinging a person was a piece of cake. However, Yang Shuang was in a miserable state. Not only did he have to endure Ling Han's sword intent, but he also had to endure Tang Jiu's relentless attacks. In just a few moves, at least a few dozen of his bones had been broken. If this continued, he might really die. Ling Han casually tossed Yang Shuang to the side. If he continued to fight, he would go too far. Right now, he had only heavily injured Yang Shuang, and he could still justify his actions. However, if he killed Yang Shuang, it would be difficult to clean up the mess. There was also no need to do so. I'll beat you up. Tang Jiu let out a long howl. This time, he no longer had any misgivings, and his attacks became even more violent. Hee hee. Ling Han laughed and unleashed the 7-kill subduing soul technique. Tang Jiu's attacks immediately faltered, and he saw Ling Han's fist smashing over, forcing him to defend himself. There were relatively few secret techniques that cultivated the divine sense, which was why the 7-kill subduing soul technique was so valuable. Although Tang Jiu's cultivation level was higher, his divine sense was not necessarily stronger than Ling Han's. After being targeted by a single attack, his combat strength immediately dropped. The two of them fought fiercely, and Ling Han constantly used the 7-kill subduing soul technique to restrict his opponent's combat strength until it was about the same level as his own. Tang Jiu was infuriated. He was clearly able to crush Ling Han in terms of combat strength, but because of his opponent's indefensible spiritual attacks, he was always beaten up at crucial moments. His attacks were unable to smoothly unleash, and he was only able to display 10 to 20% of his combat strength. He had never been so depressed before, and he even felt like vomiting blood. The other students were all stunned. Was Ling Han trying to defy the heavens? How many stars did his combat strength surpass? It's not that Ling Han's combat strength is that strong, but that senior brother Tang's combat strength has been weakened. But even if it's weakened, it's still Ling Han's own ability. This should still be considered Ling Han's combat strength, right? After all, there were too few secret techniques related to spiritual attacks. They were so rare that not many people would cultivate the strength of their divine sense to defend against this kind of attack. Thus, did Ling Han's actions mean that he had once again improved his ability to challenge those at a higher cultivation level? Was his battle prowess at the late stage of the consummate level, or battle prowess that surpassed the peak stage of the consummate level by 3 stars? After exchanging a few more blows, Tang Jiu angrily leaped to the side. He wasn't going to fight anymore. If he continued fighting, he would go crazy. He wouldn't be able to display his full battle prowess at all, and he was feeling very aggrieved. I'm not going to fight anymore, Ling Han said with a smile. Tang Jiu glared at Ling Han hatefully, and didn't say anything. With a flick of his sleeve, he left. He really couldn't do anything to Ling Han, not to mention that Ling Han had only just advanced to the high extreme, while he had already been at the peak stage of the consummate level for many years. He was completely bullying the weak. If he couldn't even bully him, then what was the point of fighting? With Tang Jiu's departure, everyone was speechless. There were only 8 elites above Tang Jiu, but not a single one of them had appeared now. They had either gone out to train or were cultivating in seclusion. How could they possibly be at his beck and call? It was already a surprise that they had managed to invite Tang Jiu out, but Tang Jiu couldn't do anything to Ling Han, so the Eastern institution was really at its wit's end. "Brother Jean, please," Ling Han said to Jean Zhihui with a smile. Jean Zhihui nodded. The two of them entered through the gates of the Eastern institution, and barged through the Eastern institution, heading towards the Northern institution. On the way, the students of the Eastern institution followed them, all of them furious and clenching their fists. "You guys really treat this as a passageway?" Jean Zhihui was curious, and said, "Brother Ling, why do these people keep following us? Why did they make things difficult for me when I said I wanted to see you at the gate?" Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "Brother Jean, you don't know, but this Scarlet Heaven Academy is divided into 4 institutions." He explained the whole story, and Jean Zhihui couldn't help but feel gloomy. So it turned out that he had made a mistake. "Brother Jean, this is the sword that you forged." Ling Han patted his shoulder, and pointed at the treasured sword in his hand. Jean Zhihui instantly raised his eyebrows, nodded repeatedly, and said, "That's right, it's Brother Ling. The material used to forge this sword is a piece of meteorite metal. After it was purchased by our villa, we did many tests, but all of them concluded that it was only a piece of level 1 godly metal. However, after several thousand years of research, this is definitely not as simple as a piece of level 1 godly metal. Indeed, it's only a piece of level 1 godly metal now, yet it seems to possess a life of its own, and has the ability to grow. I've researched for over 10,000 years, and I've been trying to figure out how to maintain its ability to grow after forging it into a sword form, and how to not destroy its appearance and might. Now, I've finally succeeded." Chapter 1092. Ling Han was obviously not very good at coming up with names. Just look at the names he had come up with, they were simply too horrible to look at. It's godly metal now, but it might become divine metal in the future, so I'll call it Divine God's Sword. Ling Han thought for a while, and instantly lost interest, casually giving this Divine God's Sword a name. However, isn't Divine Demon's Sword more domineering? Let's call it Divine Demon's Sword. Ling Han was very unprincipled, and he was really bad at coming up with names. He chuckled as he slashed to his heart's content, allowing the Divine Demon's Sword to continuously grow. With each slash, the Divine Demon's Sword would improve a little, but this improvement was very slow. If it really wanted to complete the qualitative change from level 1 to level 2, it would need a huge amount of godly metal to support it. Thankfully, for me now, level 1 godly metal really isn't that valuable. Burn money for me. Ling Han slashed for a total of 3 days and 3 nights in the Black Tower, and the amount of level 1 godly metal that he had slashed into pieces was innumerable. During this time, he also went out once to replenish a large amount of godly metal. Finally, after 3 days, the Divine Demon's Sword welcomed a qualitative change. It advanced to the level of level 2 godly metal. Ling Han discovered that the Divine Demon's Sword's ability to accommodate his martial intent had also reached a pinnacle during this process of qualitative change. In a short instant, he had actually inscribed 7 divine patterns on the body of the sword. This made Ling Han extremely happy. It should be known that using one's own martial art intent to leave a mark on a weapon in the form of a divine pattern was an extremely long process. After all, it was activated by intent, and not origin power. Thus, nurturing a god tool would at least be a matter of several decades or centuries. However, when the Divine Demon's Sword underwent a qualitative change, it was as if it had become a blank sheet of paper that Ling Han could draw freely. In the blink of an eye, 7 divine patterns had been engraved onto it. How could Ling Han not be delighted? Now the toughness of the sword has reached the level of level 2 godly metal, and the might of the divine demon sword is level 1 god tool. This meant that if he did not activate the divine sword, and only used his own power to strike, the divine demon sword would be an ordinary level 2 god tool, and not a god tool. However, if he unleashed the might of the divine demon sword, he would be able to unleash the battle prowess of a level 1 god tool. I have to continue to improve until my strength is on par with mine. Otherwise, if it were to collide with a 3rd or 4th level divine weapon, there was a high possibility that it would break. He would have to find Jin Zhihui to repair it, or else he might destroy the unique characteristics of the devouring gold steel if he were to carelessly reattach it. Otherwise, why would Jin Zhihui be in such a difficult position, and spend over 10,000 years to forge this divine demon sword? But we don't have any money. I'm so poor. Ling Han sighed. Previously, when he had bought level 1 godly metal, he had practically used up all his savings. Now, even if he still had some true origin stones left, how many more pieces of level 2 godly metal could he buy? No wonder Small Tower had said that there was only a theoretical possibility that the devouring metal could transform into divine metal. In the end, they would probably have to find all the level 20 godly metal in the whole immortal realm, and only then would the devouring metal be able to complete the final leap. Oh, right, can't the Black Tower also produce godly metal? The Black Tower could produce a piece of godly metal every year, just like how it produced spirit stones. However, if this piece of godly metal was not taken away, then its quality would increase by a certain amount every year. This caused Ling Han to hesitate. After all, even 100 pieces of low-level godly metal could not compare to a single piece of high-level godly metal. Forget it. In any case, the amount of level 2 godly metal that I need is vast, so I'll just give up on this idea. Ling Han said in his mind. As a person, he had to set his sights further. If I don't have money, then I'll work hard to concoct alchemical pills. Ling Han decided to slow down his cultivation. In any case, he had the reincarnation tree, and 1 day of cultivation was equivalent to a year of meditation for others. He also had the demonic power source, so he did not need to worry about accumulating origin power before he reached the sun-moon tier. Indeed, he could spend some time on alchemical pill concoction. He worked hard to concoct alchemical pills as he waited for the majestic heaven sect to accept him as a disciple. Shui Yenyu frequently came here to cultivate and increase her cultivation level as much as possible. Naturally, she was borrowing the light of the reincarnation tree. Her goal was very clear, and that was to be chosen by the majestic heaven sect and be together with Ling Han. Otherwise, who knew how long it would be before she could see this damn pervert again? Furthermore, this guy's brilliance definitely could not be concealed no matter where he went. She had to keep a close eye on him lest some woman took advantage of the situation. However, she did not have very high talent in martial art, and her battle prowess was only 2 stars. This was very impressive in the Scarlet Heaven Academy, but the disciples of the Majestic Heaven sect were all outstanding elites from over 100 great planets. 2 stars was definitely not enough. Thus, if she wanted to enter the Majestic Heaven sect, she had to rely on other methods. Age and cultivation level. Mountain River tier cultivators were definitely not rare in the Majestic Heaven sect, but those who were below 40 years old at the high extreme of the Mountain River tier, or even the consummate level. Even if they did not have any battle prowess that surpassed their cultivation level, they could still be classified as supreme prodigies. My battle prowess is not as strong as yours, but my cultivation speed is faster than yours, and my cultivation level far surpasses yours, so I can still suppress you. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh loudly. He wrapped his arms around this seductive beauty, and said, "Wife, your intentions have moved your husband very much. Come, give me a kiss." Shui Yenyu rolled her eyes at him, and said in annoyance, "I only want to enter the Majestic Heaven sect to improve myself." "What does that have to do with you?" This woman was really thin-skinned. Ling Han chuckled, and said, "Wife, oh, wife, this is your bad point. You're always unwilling to admit that you've been conquered by your husband. However, that's all right. I like to slowly train you, and I enjoy this process. Ah! Shui Yanyu exclaimed in surprise. This guy was going all over her again, and there was no need to think about it. He was definitely taking over her two high spots. She was both embarrassed and annoyed, and said, "Damn pervert, don't do this." "Don't do what?" Ling Han chuckled. Actually, Shui Yenyu's breasts were also filled with beauty. The curves of her breasts were so full that his desire was aroused. He couldn't help but stretch out his hand, and continuously knead them until they were deformed. A ripple that would cause one's heart to palpitate rippled out, causing the two of them to be startled at the same time. They raised their heads. The bright moon hung high in the sky, but amidst a sea of twinkling stars, a large star suddenly appeared, exuding an astonishing light. No, it was more like a fountain, spitting out light that illuminated the sky. Boom! Another wave of intense palpitations spread out. For some reason, the two of them were sure that this was coming from that large star, and had something to do with the light it was spitting out. What kind of star is this? Could it be that it has reached the end of its life, and is about to release its final brilliance? The immortal realm was completely different from a small world. A small world only had a single continent, and the stars in the sky were actually multiple meteors that elites could easily shake off. But in the immortal realm, every star was a large star, or even a sun, burning with divine flames that could incinerate heavenly body tier elites. Even great elites of the eternal river tier did not dare to barge in. Every large star had its own life cycle, but it was as long as billions or even tens of billions of years. Even heavenly body tier elites would find it very difficult to reach the end of a large star's life cycle. However, it was said that when a large star died in the end, there would be a great explosion. That was extremely frightening. Just think about how many cultivators could be born from a large star, and this power had burst forth in the short time of a few breaths. Probably even heavenly body tier elites would only be insta-killed. This was a power that could destroy the world, and probably only Genesis tiers would be able to resist it. And now, a large star in the sky suddenly blossomed with brilliance, and it was very possible that it had reached the end of its life. Chapter 1093. Something's wrong. Shui Yanyu shook her head, and said, "There shouldn't be any stars in that position." Ling Han was doubtful. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." Shui Yanyu nodded seriously. Her talent in martial art was indeed far from being comparable to Ling Han's, but she liked to read all kinds of miscellaneous books. In terms of experience, she was definitely miles ahead of Ling Han. That's strange. What is this? Both of them stared at the sky. That huge planet was still spitting out light, sending out waves to every corner of the starry sky. This was enough to affect everyone in the nearby star systems. The next day, everyone was talking about the big star that had appeared the night before. This was truly astonishing. Generally speaking, it was impossible to see a star during the day because the sun's rays were too dazzling. But now, that huge star was impressively in front of them. Although the light it was ejecting wasn't that bright, it couldn't be covered by the sunlight. Everyone discussed passionately, curious about this great star's origins. They had never been to this place before, as if it had appeared out of thin air. Big stars can appear out of nowhere. This is incredible. Immediately, some forces sent out starships into the vast universe, wanting to observe this large planet from a close distance. Starships were different from spaceships. Starships were vehicles specifically used to travel through space, and their requirements for materials and power sources were far higher than spaceships. After all, spaceships only needed to be able to fly. If a starship could be purchased by any faction, then a starship could only be purchased by a truly powerful faction. This was because the cost of purchasing and maintaining a starship was simply too high. Besides, who has nothing better to do than go out into space? It would take years to travel from one vast star to another, some even hundreds or thousands of years. Not many people were willing to stay in the lonely starry sky for such a long time. Only a few days later, the starship returned, bringing with it a piece of important news. No, it should be more accurate to say that it was shocking news. That big star is really a tomb. What? When Ling Han heard this, he was immediately shocked. A tomb had actually appeared in the starry sky. This was a very strange thing in itself. However, it could still be seen from so far away. Just how big was this tomb? Even if a mountain were to be thrown into the starry sky, it would be impossible for it to travel a long distance. Even if Ling Han had the eye of truth, he would not be able to do it. How big is this tomb? Ling Han couldn't help but be curious and suddenly wanted to go there. He wasn't the only one thinking this. Even the Majestic Heavens sect had specially sent out a notice, delaying the time of the entrance test indefinitely. They were going to send someone to explore that large tomb first. Every force was extremely cautious about this, and those with starships were already rubbing their palms together, preparing to explore that place. A big tomb in the starry sky. No matter how you look at it, it sounds like a huge treasure trove. However, there were only a few superpowers with starships. Were ordinary people even qualified to hitch a ride? Of course not. However, it was not only forces at the heavenly body tier that possessed starships. Merchant groups also possessed starships. Some caravans did interstellar business, traveling back and forth between different large planets, transporting supplies and selling specialties from other planets. The profits were huge. Of course, as mentioned before, interstellar travel was too time-consuming, and they might encounter unpredictable cosmic storms. If that happened, they would be buried in the darkness of the universe, forever dying in a foreign land. Merchant groups naturally had a keen sense of smell, and they immediately opened up a new route to that large tomb. However, as for the tickets, each ticket cost 10,000 true origin stones, which was enough to make the majority of people shrink back. Even so, the supply of tickets could not keep up with the demand, and they were instantly sold out. One had to realize that even the Empress, the 7 generals, and the left and right ministers were actively preparing to enter the galaxy, which showed how astonishing this fateful opportunity was. Ling Han took 2 tickets, one for himself, and one for Shui Yenyu. Of course, he was going to bring the Rain Emperor and the others with him, but they would stay in the Black Tower first, and they would move according to the situation when they arrived at that large tomb. One after another, the starship streaked across the sky. Not only the chaotic star's majestic empire, but the superpowers of the other 2 majestic empires had also joined in this expedition. Of course, each majestic empire would still leave behind a few elites to oversee the expedition. For example, the chaotic star's majestic empire had the 9 kings. Ling Han's ship would only depart in a few days. Thus, he decided to pay a visit to Old Man Su first. This was something that he had decided long ago. However, it just so happened that he had been interrupted by Jin Zhihui's arrival. Later on, he had been upgrading his divine demon sword, and then crazily concocting alchemical pills, which had ruined his plans. When he arrived at the library, it was no longer as lively as it had been in the past. It was cold and quiet. Presumably, the majority of people were trying their best to obtain a ticket to enter the galaxy. Those that hadn't left yet should also be making preparations, so how would they have the time to come to the library? Senior. Ling Han walked over, and respectfully bowed to Old Man Su. He owed this old man far too many favors. The 7-kill subduing soul technique, the universal 8 desolation technique. Which one of them wasn't a supreme secret technique? Even a master and disciple might not be willing to teach these techniques, but Old Man Su had taught them to him in exchange for a promise from him. Old Man Su was dozing off. Hearing this, he opened his eyes, and looked him over. He couldn't help but reveal an expression of surprise, and said, "How did your cultivation level advance so quickly?" Although Ling Han didn't know how strong Old Man Su was, he firmly believed that the other's cultivation level was definitely unfathomable. Thus, it wasn't at all strange that he could see through his cultivation level with a glance. He smiled, and said, "I had a little fortuitous encounter." Old Man Su didn't ask what kind of fortuitous encounter it was. His expression became solemn, and he said, "Brat, don't pursue cultivation level too much. If you want to construct the Supreme Tao Pagoda, you have to take every step solidly. Don't be greedy and advance rashly. Otherwise, it will only affect your future prospects." Good advice was unpleasant to the ear. Ling Han hurriedly obeyed, and said, "Thank you for your reminder, Senior. I will definitely remember it." Old Man Su nodded, showed a sliver of a smile, and said, "However, it's very strange. Although your cultivation level has advanced ridiculously fast, your foundation is incredibly stable. This old man can't understand it." This wasn't strange, because Ling Han had the reincarnation tree. Comprehending for a day was equivalent to comprehending for a year, so how could he possibly lose control of his cultivation level? Ling Han only smiled. It was one thing for him to be grateful to Old Man Su, but it was another matter for him to reveal the truth to the other. In reality, his understanding of Old Man Su was close to zero, so how could he possibly reveal the secrets of the Black Tower and the reincarnation tree to him? Since your cultivation speed is so fast, this old man should also warn you earlier, lest you miss it, Old Man Su continued. "Warn me about what?" Ling Han asked. Old Man Su didn't answer, and instead countered with a question, "How many stars do you think a cultivator's battle prowess can surpass?" N. This could also be considered a question. 4-star geniuses were as rare as phoenix feathers and qilin horns, while 5-star geniuses only existed in legends. This was publicly acknowledged. However, Ling Han knew that his battle prowess was more than 5 stars. Now, he could surpass 5 stars in power alone, and if he used all kinds of techniques, surpassing 7 stars wouldn't be a big problem. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.